still my hair back.
¿Qué pasa, primates? Y bienvenidos a mi canal. What's up, primates? Welcome to my channel. I'm Shane the Skeptic, and as always, I thank you for tuning into my channel to watch my content. I don't even know if I'm going to keep this one up for good or if I'm going to delete it. The first thing, I don't know if it's an elephant in the room or not, is that I have my air conditioning on at the moment. I'm going to turn it back off so the sound is better, but I'm in Texas. It's the summertime. I turned my air conditioning off because I joined my friend Nitty's live stream. Shout outs to Nitty. If you're not subscribed to Nitty, go look up Nitty. Go subscribe to Nitty. I was on his channel and, StreamYard. I turned my air conditioning off so I wouldn't have it on in the background. Well, it got hot. I turned it on right now. Sound is fine according to Pragmatics. So I'm just going to keep going as it is. So for everybody, I put the StreamYard link in the description. I am hoping that somebody else tunes into this live stream so that we could actually talk. If not, that's obviously perfectly fine. But I'm going to, I'll end it shorter if nobody joins than I will if somebody does join. Start out with that. So, to start things out, I haven't done a live stream in a minute. I haven't live streamed since I got back from Colombia. And I actually still have footage from Colombia that I need to edit into vlogs. Tonight I'm drinking some wine, so there's the wine that I'm drinking. Anyway, but yeah, no, I'm back here, back in Los Estados Unidos. I'm here in the United States, so I need to get back on top of my stuff. But ever since I've been back, I've been working like crazy. Last week I worked 53 hours, and for those who don't know, I work overnight. So working 53 hours when you work night shift, you're pretty busy. You don't got a whole lot to do, right? And then obviously, like, I got a girl, I got to be like finding the time to talk to her and everything. So like and then I read, right? So as far as being on YouTube goes, I just haven't had a whole lot of time for this. But the reality is, you guys, I wanted to make some content pretty soon, and I'm just going to sit here and talk about some of the content that I have in mind coming up soon, basically because of the fact that I'm just live streaming right now. But I see someone ask, how's the pup? Far from a pup. He's an old ass man. Huh, Bob? Yeah, he's an old man. His name's Bob. I spell it B-O-B-B, so I could call him B-O-double-B. But no, he's really healthy. When I got back from Colombia, he was having some stomach trouble. And I'm not going to lie, I was concerned that I was seeing the end of him. Because you got to keep in mind, my dog is 14 years old. When your dog is 14 years old and starts getting sick, you got to wonder if this is the last time they're going to get sick. They're going to the last thing, And so when I got back, he ended up having, I don't want to get too graphic, but like bloody diarrhea, basically. But I got him on some good food. I got him on some good medicine. And my dog is really healthy. And I'm really lucky to have such a healthy dog. He's 14 years old. I mean, damn. He's an old-ass dog. And he's healthy. Like, he looks like he's got a few years in him. I don't know for sure what he's got in him, but he's got, he's energetic. He's, he's back to life. You know what I'm saying? So, I see somebody, you asked me, how is he? I was like, you know what? I'm going to stop and pause. I'm grateful. My dog is healthy. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, no, some of the content that I have in mind coming up pretty soon here, I want to talk about deconstruction in depth. Maybe get some other people to have on, like almost like a podcast, live stream kind of setting. Because the reality is, now, if I'm going to say good or bad, Good. Deconstruct from Christianity. Christianity is harmful in that it makes you stupid and weak. I believe that strongly about Christianity. Somebody says, so what if you don't believe? Why can't you just let people believe? Like, if I want to be completely blunt with you, which it's easier to do when you've had a little wine, right? Christianity makes people weak and it makes them stupid. Now, when I say weak, obviously in this context, I'm not referring to physically weak. I'm referring to people being weak in their character, emotionally weak. Christianity teaches you to praise victimhood. And when people hear that, they might think that what I'm saying is that you shouldn't be sympathetic. No, sympathy is a good thing. There's a difference, though, and a fine line between having sympathy and praising somebody merely for being a victim. One second, you guys. I'm going to go turn my air conditioning off. It's cold enough in here. Keyword enough. I don't mean to say that it's like cold in here. But, okay. So, I'm back. And I'm going to take a quick sip of wine. So, cheers to, I think, Pragmatic. I think you're my only viewer right now. Live. Get people after the fact. And shout outs to the people after the fact. But shout outs to Pragmatic Crystal for being here now. Now that I pause and reflect, I think you are like my most loyal viewer. Like, if I think of all the people, I have a lot of people who tune in regularly. But I think anytime I've had one or two people, it's been like Pragmatic has been the one commenting like, yo, present. And I'm like, hey, that's fucking dope. Big cheers to Gary Priestley too. Yeah, hell yeah. Big cheer, big, and of course, like I'm saying, to everybody that tunes in later after the fact too. If I don't delete this shit, I normally delete streams that I do when I'm drunk. Thank you so much. I do appreciate that. It's motivational. And I don't mean that. It's almost hard to say that in a way that sounds authentic and not sarcastic. But like, I've had people, even if they leave a comment or they say something in a live chat or they send me a message on Facebook, like I've had a few people say something to me about how, something that I do is like got to them or worked for them or it made a difference to them. And it really does keep me going. So I want to say thanks for that. Yeah. And thanks for that. You know what? Not everybody appreciates authenticity, but you got to find the people who do. And you know what? I think, Gary, you'll probably be somebody who gets this. Appreciating authenticity, part of that is accepting that sometimes people disagree with you. And I don't just mean disagree with you. I mean think differently from you. And sometimes it's annoying or it's disappointing. Like if I like everything about what you say politically, right? And then I hear you talk about religion and you're a fucking like fundamentalist Christian. I'm like, ooh. Like if you were some left-leaning person who wasn't too far left and I agreed with everything you said about your criticism of conservatives and leftism is better, but not when it goes too far. If I was like that, and then I heard you talk about religion and you said some wacky shit, I'm like, oh man, but appreciating authenticity is appreciating. I mean, it's just the tautology, right? Authenticity, people being themselves, what they are, what they actually believe. And I feel like I went through a phase of not being authentic enough. And I think that phase began when I entered into the atheist community of Austin, if I'm being completely blunt with you guys. I think that's when it started. And I can only blame myself for my own actions. I'm accountable for my actions. But I believe that, like, if I went through a phase of not being authentic, I think it lasted a few years. And I was still authentic, but I mean, not being fully authentic, I mean. But I focus on that. Because I even question myself, am I being real with myself? You know what I mean? Like, it might sound weird to question if you're being real with yourself, but ask yourself this question. Have you ever forgiven somebody and asked yourself, do I forgive this person really? Or am I trying to speak it into existence? You know what I'm saying? Like you ask yourself, am I being real with myself here? Because sometimes when somebody says something to me, I ask them this question: are you lying to me or are you lying to yourself? Because sometimes when you talk to somebody, you realize that they sound a lot more like they're trying to convince themselves that something is the case while telling it to you than they are trying to convince you that it is the case. Does anybody relate to that? That's the kind of thing that I'm referring to here. Let's see, yes, there would be a few things we disagree on, but we have different life experiences and we need to learn from each other and challenge our own perspectives. Precisely. And that's one reason I like to travel. People are not going to think the same way that I do in every different part of the world. You know what I mean? Yeah. Found you as a co-host in AXP. A lot of people did, so they're all pages in our story. Yep. Hey, wasn't that a page in my story? I can't stop but think about this whenever somebody mentions AXP, though. That, like, ultimately, at some point, it's like it's a YouTube channel that I was on twice, right? But, like, people remember me for it to this day. They were like, I saw you. I had in twice in the grocery store that I work at, somebody recognized me at work. One guy said, "Are you the Shane Isgrig?" One guy said that to me, bro, like literally. And I'm like, at the end of the day, you know, it's hard to explain, but like I was a lot less than I am now. But it was an interesting phase. I gotta tell you guys, while I'm just kind of like shooting the shit, just, talking on a live stream, I am so curious about what the ACA is like these days. I mean, I haven't gone back, but I know that Dillahunty's left, and one of the biggest problems with the ACA was that it was full of these people who were basically like Dillahunty worshippers, right? And Dillahunty's a piece of shit. If you ever get to know him personally, you'd find out immediately. Like anybody that knows him personally knows it. And the people that are friends with him really just excuse it because they want to get some opportunity from him. But that aside, though, he's out of the ACA, right? And so, like, people have asked me, hey, now that he's gone, are you going to go back? And I've really thought about it. And at the end of the day, still no. Well, that might have had a lot to do with me leaving and everything. I can realize in hindsight that even apart from, Dillahunty and his fanatics, even apart from all of that, right? Here's what my problem with the ACA was, and I imagine, can't say I know, I imagine this will always be the case with it. And this is a lot of the problem with the atheist communities online. Now my viewership's going up while I criticize basically the people that watch. But hey, what's up, everybody? This is the way that it works with atheist communities that come about online, is that now a lot of people are atheists and they don't give a shit about religion, but the type of people that get involved in atheist communities, we're normally former religious people, right? Not always, but probably over 90% of the time, the kind of person that gets into counter apologetics, debates, formal debates with Christians as to whether or not God is real or not. Normally, we have some religious background. We used to be religious. I'm telling you, more than 90% of the time, right? And so when you think about it, you know how when addicts quit using, they tend to replace their addiction? Best example I could think of, alcoholics. When alcoholics quit drinking, they tend to eat ice cream, any type of sugar, but I'm going to personally say it's often ice cream. If somebody is a raging alcoholic for years and they decide to quit drinking, very, very often they start eating ice cream. And one of the reasons is because alcohol is a sugar, so you crave sugar, so you just replace the type of sugar. That's separate from the point here, though. The point is, one of the best ways to get over a bad addiction is to replace it with another that's not as bad. And so caffeine, I mean, I'm saying this as somebody who drinks a lot of coffee every day. Drinking the amount of coffee that I drink every day is not good for your health. But if you were smoking crack, or if you were doing coke, or you're doing meth, and you quit doing meth and you started drinking coffee every day, yeah, coffee's an addiction. But like, it's way better to drink coffee every day than it is to do meth, right? And so, in a similar sense, but a more extreme one, when people have spent their entire life in either a religion or a cult like church, right? They have a religious or a cult like way of thinking. And I think it's a good thing that people talk about deconstruction. But ironically enough, some of those who speak the loudest about deconstructing are those who are the least capable of doing so. Are some of those who they replace some of them replace Christianity with another ideology. And now all they do is replace who they've let think for them. Now, granted, they're letting better minds think for them than they were before. So that's good. But they're still letting other minds think for them, right? You see what I'm saying? And that's one of the things that I realized about the atheist community is a lot of people that in the atheist community, you have to keep this in mind. They grew up either in a cult or they grew up in a religion that was to the extent of a cult, or that was cult-like in many ways. And you can't be surprised when people who've spent their entire life in that way of thinking continue to think that way, continue to act that way, continue to let somebody think for them, but they just replace who it is they let think for them. Like, you can't be surprised. And so one of the reasons I won't go back to the atheist community of Austin is that in my personal experience, it's a community for herd animals. If you're somebody who's read Friedrich Nietzsche, you will understand this. There are lone animals and there are herd animals. And the type of person that belongs in the atheist community of Austin is not the lone animal. That is the herd animal. And I'm going to pause on that and mention this. Biologically speaking, we are all the members of a social species. So I'm not, as someone who's saying I'm a lone animal, I'm not saying that I don't need any communication with a community or I don't need people in my corner. I'm not saying that. But there's a type of person, and I know sheeple. They're sheep. I know conspiracy theorists call people sheeple, but really skeptics recognize that sheeple exist. It's not merely the conspiracy theorists who use that term. And it's some people, exactly like Friedrich Nietzsche says, they are herd animals. And a person like myself, who is a lone animal, can try my hardest, but at the end of the day, we're not part of that herd. And so if you're the type of person that goes to the atheist community of Austin or a similar community, a lot of the time what it is this. Not always. Very often, though. You are looking for your herd. You left Christianity. You left, or it doesn't have to be Christianity. It could be a particular church, and it doesn't have to be a church, but you left a particular church or a particular cult. And now you're looking for the herd that you fit into. But not enough of you have stopped and asked yourself, am I a herd animal to begin with? So my takeaway from what I'm talking about here is this. Before you look for the herd that you fit into, ask yourself, are you a herd animal? Some of you are. Some of you listening are. And I can't condemn you on your own nature. If you're a herd animal, I can't speak to that. Like, I can't tell you not to be. It's your nature. If you're a herd animal, perhaps the best option for you is find the best herd. But question that before you try to go joining. Okay, this church didn't work. This atheist community doesn't work. Who's the right answer? Is it a group? Because what a lot of people don't realize this is autistic people herd rather less than cats. Yep. I'm guessing from that comment that you're a fellow autist. I'm autistic myself. So, like, yeah, we don't like autistic people. I'll mention that too. A lot of you, there are more of you that are going to be listening that are neurotypical than are autistic. And I'm autistic, so I can't really speak exactly on the neurotypical mind. But whether I'm autistic and you're neurotypical or vice versa, it doesn't matter. Autistic people can be herd animals too. Neurotypical people can be lone animals too. I will say what is an obvious, demonstrable, observable fact. More autistic people are lone animals than neurotypical people. More neurotypical people are herd animals than autistic people. But that doesn't really matter. Because, like I said prior, you have autistic herd animals, you have neurotypical lone animals. They're there. And I've seen them all, right? So, like, I mean, this is one of the reasons it's good to know a lot of people. Let's see. Very selectively social with a small number of their own kind. Yes. Well, here's the thing about being selectively social, you guys, is there's a type of person that I want to talk about that is like one of the most common types of men to exist. Women too, but like I see this a lot in men. But I mean, whatever. You can leave gender out of it. It still holds. A lot of people, they go to work and they earn the means necessary to survive, and they don't do anything beyond that. They earn what's necessary to survive, and then I go to work, I pay my bills, and that's that. They don't read. They don't watch documentaries. They don't learn. They watch twerking videos and they listen to rap songs with mindless lyrics. Now, I'm going to be clear about something. I'm not saying there's something wrong with watching twerking videos or listening to rap songs with mindless lyrics. Now hip hop's my favorite genre of music. So if anybody thinks I'm like talking down on hip hop, that's not what it is. Or rap. No. I'm talking specifically about mindless lyrics. If you only consume that kind of content, you don't have any substance in your brain. You don't have anything of exact. There's nothing of substance in your brain, right? You're only consuming mindless lyrics. And if you only hang out with those types of people, you show me your friends, I'll show you your future. Think about that expression, right? This is how the ancient philosopher Plato is probably in my top 3 least favorite philosophers. Love Aristotle, love Socrates, not a fan of Plato. But Plato said something that was one of my favorite quotes. They live as though they'll never die, and then they die as though they never lived. Again, they live as though they'll never die, and then they die as though they never lived. And you know what? That's most of you. Be different. You know what I'm saying? Like that's read, learn, explore, travel, enjoy the different fruits of life. You know what I'm saying? Hey. Smoke weed every day. Drink fine wines too. Religion is good at creating a community. Most people need to replace those kinds of connections when they're atheists. Yeah. And, some do, some don't. You're right there. I've never smoked weed. Cannot imagine never smoking weed. The first time I smoked weed, I was 10 years old, but I became like a regular smoker at 13 years old. I cannot imagine not smoking weed. I just know smoking weed. I don't know not smoking weed. You know what I mean? Like, I just know smoking weed. But on that note, I think I know what you guys will say, but let me ask you guys, because I'll probably close this stream out in the next 5 minutes or so. You think I should keep this stream open, or you think I should close this stream out, or you think I should delete the stream? I won't take it as an insult, but if I delete the stream, it's a limited edition. It's for you guys only, you who were here live to view it, right? Should I delete this stream? Because I think I should. Because I normally don't keep streams up on when I'm drunk. I normally delete them after the fact. I'll let the live chat speak. I'll infer some opinion. I think this should be a you guys only thing, limited edition. Come on, you guys. Comment. There's 3 of you still. Anyway, I was talking about content I have coming up. I want to still talk on that. So, here's the reality. I want to make content about Christianity causing weakness. Friedrich Nietzsche woke me up to that. Like I already had a disdain for Christianity. But after reading Nietzsche, like, the thing about reading Friedrich Nietzsche, honestly, of all philosophers, he changes you. You know what I'm saying? And one thing that Friedrich Nietzsche said, I'm not on board with him on this thought, but like I follow where he's going with it or where he's coming from. In Friedrich Nietzsche's mind, Christianity basically is where morality comes from, and morality has made people weaker. Therefore, Christianity is weak. That's not how I see it. I think you can have morality absent of weakness, but I think Christianity teaches a type of morality that makes you weak. And I think only the best example, but not the only example, is that Christianity teaches that revenge is a bad thing. That belief makes you weak. I'm telling you, like, people don't want to hear this when they've been indoctrinated with Christianity. Even those who were deconstructing but haven't fully deconstructed. Like, this is what I'm telling you. Revenge is not necessarily a bad thing. I'm not saying it's necessarily a good thing, but it's mostly a good thing. Revenge is more good than it is bad. Okay? That's the reality of it. Because those who don't exert revenge, because they are weak and they're known to not exert revenge, they're the most vulnerable to being taken advantage of. If I want to victimize somebody and I have to pick between you, somebody who doesn't get revenge, and him, somebody who doesn't let shit slide, somebody who gets revenge if you wrong him, who am I more likely to steal from? I'm much more likely to steal from you, because you don't get revenge, because you think revenge is bad. Okay. You think revenge is bad? Cool. I'm going to take from you. And there's no consequences to me because you won't get revenge on it. That guy, on the other hand, if I steal from him, he'll beat the shit out of me. So I'm not going to steal from him. But so many of you want to be moral, and your concept of morality is skewed because of what Christianity has done to you. So the way that I describe it, Christianity infected Western civilization with this parasite of a value hundreds of years ago. See, Christianity provides a threat for people without ethics to behave morally. On that note, I would agree because, like, the reality is, I don't even remember who it was who said this, but if you look this quote up, you'll find who said it. With or without religion, you'd have good people doing good things and bad people doing bad things. But only with religion do you have good people doing bad things because they think that they're good. And that's exactly it. Like, the kind of people that carry out suicide bombings, they're not like thinking they're doing bad. They're not thinking I'm doing wrong. Right? Like, the terrorists don't think that they are the terrorists. That's what people think, that terrorists think that they're terrorists. No, terrorists don't think that they're terrorists. Terrorists think they're the ones doing the right thing and that you're the terrorist. So people don't get that. I don't know. There you go. Yo, Secular. Fuck, I haven't even responded to you on Messenger. My bad, dude. But yo, everybody, I met Secular in person. Yeah, I fucking forgot the guy's real name, Elliot. I remember, and I met him at the restaurant. I met him at Fogo de Chao. I got Brazilian fucking steakhouse with this guy. I met him. He was with his lady. They were both fucking incredibly pleasant people to have a meal with. They were just awesome fucking people. And yeah, I met these guys. We were out of my streets. They were out here in Austin. But I hit the guy up because I seen that he was out here in Austin, and I was like, hey, I got to get a hold of this guy. I got to see this guy while he's out here. And I did. I was happy. They covered the meal. So without speaking any further, I got them when they come here. I'm just going to say that much. On whatever I refer to. Could be referring to a mountain of things. A mountain of Sinai of things, if you will. But, yeah, no, fucking. Honestly, though. Secular. Nah, bro. This is a cool fucking dude. If you ever get the chance to kick it with Secular, be on a live stream with him, whatever, I'm going to say salute to this guy. He's a cool fucking guy. But, yo, I'm going to... All right. Maybe because the hour is too late for you, I'm putting the StreamYard link back in the chat. I'm down to keep this going if somebody wants to join. Otherwise, I'm going to probably close out in the next 10 or so. What are you drinking? I want to remind y'all. So I'm drinking a Cabernet Sauvignon called St. Francis. This is the second time I bought this wine specifically because, real talk, this is a good fucking wine. I became a wine drinker within the past few months. I mean, I've always kind of liked wine. I never disliked it. But lately, I've really been enjoying it. All right, Secular said he'll come on, so that's cool. He said he'll grab a drink. Perfect. So he's getting prepared properly. I respect the guest that comes prepared. Good religious wine. You know what's weird is like I really feel, I think it's weird that like the Catholic Church does red wine, because I feel like, as someone who was raised Christian, right? I feel like I look like I'm from heaven today. I'm in a white outfit. I got white pants, white shirt on. I look like I'm from heaven. Fucking, I'm drinking the devil's juice. I feel like red wine, and I was raised Catholic, where red wine is a regular thing. Communion, right? You don't do communion with white wine. You do it with red wine, right? Red wine just seems like something that Satan would have came up with. You know what I mean? Like, people who used to be religious. Like, we all know God ain't real, Satan ain't real, but pause and pretend they're real. Who seems more likely to come up with wine? Wine seems a lot more like something that Satan would have came up with. Satan makes more cool shit, I feel. But hey, that's just me. Pragmatic Crystal. Shane is God. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I'm as close as it fucking gets. Hey. Catholic Mass put me on red wine. Did they really? I don't know if you're saying that to be funny and blame the church, but I could believe that. Dude, red wine is fucking good. Do you like Merlot or Cabernet? Because I'm all about the Cabernet. Oh, Purple's here. Yo. Hey, how's it going?
Okay.
That's good. It's better than terrible.
Well, okay is probably the best you'll ever get out of me. I'm, not
You know
always
what?
that optimistic about my life.
But you're honest. That's better. Because to me, you know what? There's such thing. A lot of people don't want to familiarize themselves with this. There's a term, toxic positivity. It's a very real thing. And you know what I'm saying? Like, don't pretend to be positive about shit when shit's not going perfectly. So I want to preface that I respect you for just being real about it. And Secular's here too. So what's going on, Secular?
Hang on, I'm pouring this cider right now. It's probably it may fuck with some people's audio, but that's okay because we're done. And I'm great. I'm doing good, hanging out. I was just hanging out over with some other wonderful people. And I don't know. It's this weird habit of mine. Like, I don't do this with Twitter or Facebook or I don't do this with anything else, but on YouTube, for some reason, every single time I'm done with one task and I have 30 seconds in between this and anything else, it's like, what's going on YouTube? And I turned on YouTube and I was like, oh, my boy Shane's up. Okay. So I just had to come hang, especially
Dude,
Purple's here. And
live streamed since I've been back from Colombia. Like, I
yeah,
haven't done it. And
that must have been a great time, dude. I saw the updates and stuff, man. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, I still have footage to edit. I still have vlogs. I've probably only posted half the vlogs I have, to be honest with you. But I've been so busy with work that I haven't been editing my shit. But like, at the end of the day, no, I went out to Colombia. I met this girl in like November. We've been like romantic since January, but we made our we were official since I went out there, right? And so I went out there and I finally, we linked up. Her family likes me, I had a great time. And like, no, it's at the point she told me she was like, when she was at the grocery store with her mom was like, oh, we need to get this when Shane comes here. Cause like her mom knows that I love tacos, right? Cause so they always make fun of me because of how much I love tacos. Because tacos aren't as popular in Colombia as like Mexico, for example, obviously, right? And so like, I don't know, it was just kind of funny. So like everything worked out, and but no, I haven't live streamed, and I need to get back on it. But like, part of me is I've just been reading and reading and reading, and like, that saying, the more I see, the less I know, right? Like, dude, sometimes I feel like I need to wait to make content. You know what I mean? Like, I need to read 10 more books before I make a video.
Yeah.
Like, I just feel like,
but
it's my shit.
But and I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna start this by saying I'm not the type that likes to just throw the ad hominems, okay? But sometimes they're necessary because fuckheads like Dennis Prager and Matt Walsh and Frank Turek are out there just making shit, not reading anything. They haven't read the book. They don't know. And they're making content. And these guys are out there putting out. And I get that though, dude.
I have to pause. I'm a pedantic asshole, and it's only because I love language. But listen, I love language and philosophy, so I can't not do this.
Tell me.
I frequently find myself going back to a quote from one of the Leo Frankowski books that in every project, there comes a point where you have to shoot the engineers and just put the damn thing in production.
Perfect. I love that quote. I'll never forget what I just heard. Here. Fuck, that almost made me forget what I was going to say. What was I going to say? God damn.
Yeah, I know what you
Truth
mean. I could
engineer.
spend months and months doing research
Wow.
and only get a 7-minute video out of it.
Wow, that was amazing.
And
what was
these-
that?
I was just talking about certain assholes making stuff. Matt
Oh.
Walsh. I said, yeah.
It was. I'm a pedantic asshole. I had
Uh-huh.
to say this. Okay, a lot of people, when they learn what an ad hominem is, they
Mhm.
start to conflate personal insult with ad hominem.
I know.
Now,
I know.
I need to. You probably know this, but I need to clarify for the audience because you done fucked up.
Please
here,
do. No,
buddy.
please do. Please do.
Okay. An ad hominem is a personal insult in place of keywords, in place of an argument.
Right.
Now, for example, if I say that's not true because you're an uneducated fucking buffoon, also the dumbest person I've ever talked to, you could hardly fucking put a sentence together, you're an idiot. If I say if I say you're wrong because you're an idiot,
Correct.
that's an ad hominem. If I say you're wrong because you're uneducated, I'm ad hominem. But if I refute your argument and then insult you on top of it,
Correct.
that's not an ad hominem. So insult,
That's just an insult.
right? It's just an insult. So let's just remember, not all insults are ad hominems. You're allowed to insult people without it
Well,
being a
I guess
fallacy.
the difference is it's not you're wrong because you're an idiot, as opposed to you're wrong and you're an idiot.
And you're an idiot.
I was going to use that example. No, Purple. What
Yes,
you just
and.
said, that is precisely like everything I was fucking yapping my lips about. What you just said, that's just the whole point. What you just said.
Right.
The difference is you're wrong and you're an idiot, or you're wrong because you're an idiot. That's
Right.
the whole point. That's the
Right.
whole point. She hit the nail
Right.
on the head. There you go.
That's fair.
That's fair. That's what it is.
And I ad hominems and insults, neither of them are exactly, the rhetoric that I like to dabble in. But if I'm gonna pick one, it's gonna be the insult, and I'll use it wisely for people like Ben Shapiro. And
Well, yeah, exactly. Well, like
Yeah.
I just feel like, see,
With some
under
people, like
yeah.
like Prager, it's really hard not to.
man,
I was gonna
It
get it.
does.
I keep yapping my lips about Nietzsche, but one thing that Nietzsche said was, hear this out, and it's another thought that I don't agree with entirely, but the essence of what he's saying, of the concept, I agree with. He said that morality has essentially become immoral because, okay, if you think of morality, right, as being that which promotes flourishing, right? We weaken ourselves with morality. Think of the example I gave earlier of not getting revenge and thus making yourself weaker, right? Morality itself has become immoral because you have caused the human species to prevent itself from achieving greatness on a moral basis. Right? So like if your idea was, so morality has become immoral because essentially because we want to be moral, we don't flourish. But morality is supposed to be about promoting flourishing.
Well,
Yeah.
And so you don't have to agree with Nietzsche, but that's Nietzsche's point.
It sounds like there's almost like it's almost like it's kind of in a vein of Mill, where he talks about the higher pleasures, and what he's talking about is purposefully enduring suffering temporarily in this moment so as to achieve something better in the future.
It's a different topic, though. I think.
Well,
I don't disagree with you at all. I just think
it is. It's a different side of that coin. It's morality has restricted us from doing certain actions that would technically result in flourishing.
Right.
But that restriction of those actions, in theory at least, is supposed to be something that achieves a greater flourishing. But it does, in some sense, restrict us
Right.
from getting to those objectives and those goals that we want. Yeah, and I think, yeah, what you were saying about like the focus of it is right, but not like the exact.
Exactly.
wording.
And so like
Yeah.
you can, I think, Nietzsche goes to basically
Yeah, he goes far.
he goes far, but you basically can understand his point without going as far as he does, right? Where you can basically see as to where, in a sense, morality can hold me back. Now, in some ways, let it, right? Because I'd rather do the moral thing than what this is, right? But you also have to think, in what cases am I allowing my concept of morality to prohibit me from achieving greatness? And if you were from a Christian background, what from my Christian concept of morality am I allowing to prohibit me in my atheist life of achieving greatness? And one of the best examples of it, let's think purity culture, right? Now, when I talk about puta madre, hijo de chinga, I'll fucking have to just I spilled some of my wine, but I'm okay. But I have a carpet shampooer, so I'll be all good.
Spilling wine is alcohol abuse.
I also don't think YouTube's algorithm looks for cuss words in other languages. So like, you're good.
Puta madre,
Yeah.
no me importa.
Right. Okay, can I throw this? Can I throw this?
I want to let you talk. I just want to wipe this up real quick.
Oh, do you think,
some
bro?
real quick? But you talk, and please, that keeps my stream from being quiet. So please.
Oh yeah. I've got.
Talk.
I can always just ramble about nothing for 30 minutes. But I want to throw this thought out to both of y'all for sure. And Purple, definitely. I want to go back and forth on this with you, and then I'll get Shane's thoughts when he comes back. But so I'm getting more and more into this thought when the discussion of morality comes up, because I feel like a lot of times what happens, and tell me if this kind of vibes with you or not, like, because you've had lots of discussions, with religious and non-religious people, right, of so many stripes. And I feel like a lot of times with the religious, the discussion of morality results in them just basically like questioning the foundation of all existence, right? And for me, I'm coming to this place where I think more and more so this is solidifying for me. And I'd love some pushback from people if this is totally off base. But I feel like at the end of the day, all moral systems that I've ever heard of, that I've ever heard anybody lay out to me, have at least in some aspect a concept of well-being. It's just a matter of how consistently do you apply that in your system? How overarching do you apply that, And I really am getting more and more to this place where it's just like, I really do think that's the answer, dudes. Like, I really do feel like it's everywhere, because at the end of the day, the reason I shouldn't upset Allah and I should care what Muhammad does is because I'm going to be in pain if I don't, right? Really comes down to well-being.
Have better well-being if I agree to what he says.
No matter what it is.
It always comes, they limit it to this kind of like stick and carrot concept, right? If you will, right? But like, even if you don't go it that simple, I very strongly believe with you that morality is predicated on its foundation, not entirety.
Sure.
Foundation is the promotion of well-being and / flourishing, and the minimization or negation of suffering and pain. Now, that doesn't mean that anything that promotes flourishing is moral. Anything that negates morality,
Of course.
you're right, or anything that negates pain is morality. But like, that's the foundation for morality. So you have to think. Now, when people, I'm autistic. I think when I get into metaphors and analogies, I get very like specific, right? When you get into saying, "Oh, this is the foundation," I used to be a construction worker, right? I used to be a framer. So I think, okay, well, you have your foundation, and you have your framing, and then your scaffolding, and then you have your siding. Like, I'm thinking of every step of it, right? So when you say your foundation, okay, well, I used to work on houses, right? A foundation isn't a house. A foundation is essential to a house. But when I hear people talk about a foundation as though that's like the whole thing, this is what I know with a lot of precepts. What's your foundation? Your foundation. My foundation. I'm like, I don't think you know what a foundation is.
Yeah.
Like, in a house, the foundation is the concrete.
It doesn't answer every question.
For any group to maintain any level of cohesion, they need a shared morality.
Exactly.
And you are right as far as, personal flourishing, because the ultimate penalty, if you don't agree with the shared morality, is you get ostracized from the group.
Right, you get kicked out. Yeah. And again, I think what you were just saying, Shane, ties into that well, because it's this idea that there is, at the end of the day, there is this overarching thing that seems to be the case, right? And like, I think this still answers for all of the edge cases, but like psychopaths and people that don't have this conception of right and wrong and stuff. But there you have to apply more contextual understanding depending on what the scenario is. But at the end of the day, theoretically at least, you're going for the flourishing, right? And it's just like, so obviously sometimes that's going to mean that you go through a little bit of pain. Like, the person who wants to achieve some level of physical fitness is going to have to go through some level of suffering, right?
The person who wants to go through getting sober is going to have to go through a detox.
Exactly. If you want to be a doctor, you're going to have to go through a decade worth of getting your ass handed to you. Like, that's the way it works, But the outcome at the end of that is a level of flourishing that couldn't have been achieved without that. And again, like, that doesn't negate the concept. That doesn't negate.
It doesn't at all, because all it boils down to is, okay, I'm willing to take another $2 in debt if it means I get another $1 million, right? Like, essentially what you're saying is,
right,
yes, I still promote flourishing, the maximization of it, but me promoting the maximization of flourishing isn't inconsistent with the idea that, hey, if you experience a slight amount of pain, you'll experience X amount of flourishing. It's consistent with it. If I say I want to get the maximal amount of money, and you say, okay, well, if you could invest $3 knowing you could get 1,000, would you? And I say, yeah, I would. So you would lose $3.
Right.
I'm gonna say, yeah, I would, because I'd get that extra $1,000. Right?
But it's based on, and this is where I think, and I feel like we'd all agree on this. This is where the evidentiary basis comes in, right? Because you wouldn't lose that $3 if there was essentially a 0.0001% chance you'd ever get any return. But you would lose that fucking $3 in a heartbeat if there was like a 250% chance you would get it back, because of, hey, look at these things. We know based on all of this, background data, that this is actually something that, yeah, it's worth the
Yeah.
suffering to go.
People
Like,
playing the lottery disputes your argument.
I don't think so. I don't think so, because that's chance. I don't think so.
You know what? I bought
There's
two-
always bullshit and randomness.
I haven't bought a lottery ticket in over 6 years, but I bought
I
two
haven't either.
lottery tickets. They both lost. Now,
Yeah.
that's probably all the lottery tickets I'll buy this year.
Yeah, when the
But-
Powerball got up to close to $500,000, I bought a couple of tickets, a few months back.
I mean, here's my thing about lottery tickets. If you buy 2 to 5 of them, right? What you're doing is you're changing your chances from impossible to probably fucking not.
Yeah.
If you don't
Yeah.
buy a lottery
Slight
ticket,
increase. You never
If-
have a chance.
if you don't buy a lottery ticket, you can't win. If you do buy a lottery ticket, you probably fucking won't win. But
Yeah.
I'd rather be in the probably fucking not than the definitely not.
I get that. I do understand
So-
that.
Anytime
I
you
buy-
gamble, you have to assume you're throwing the money away, and occasionally you might get a
Perfect.
pleasant surprise.
Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And like, what's some people they get caught up on like they'll spend $20 on a ticket and they get $1 or $2 back, and they think, oh
Yeah.
well, obviously I want some of it back. I could justify another purchase, and I'm like,
Sure.
no, you just spent $18 instead of 20.
Yeah.
You saved a little, but you still made a purchase. Like,
That's where that sunk cost fallacy starts to hit you,
Yeah.
sunk
man.
cost
And
fallacy.
it's such a
biased,
weird
but
one.
still, yeah.
Man, you really do feel like, because you've already invested so much, like you should get something out of it, but it just doesn't necessarily. I've been to so when I was younger, just where we live in Tennessee, we're very close to the Kentucky border, and at the time when I was younger, we didn't have gambling in Tennessee legally. So we do now. We have all kinds of lottery shit that's happened within the last
Right.
10 years. But when I was like 6 years old, it was like a thing for my family. We would drive over the Kentucky border, and our dad would give me and my brother like $50, and we can go spend it on whatever bullshit scratch off lottery tickets we wanted for the
great.
next. Yeah, it was awesome. It was so much fun because it didn't really matter that much. And sometimes you would walk away with like a few bucks in your pocket as a kid, and it was great. Obviously, my dad had to
Right.
purchase all the tickets and stuff. We were 6 and
Right.
7, but
Right.
still, like, I can definitely tell you there were times like I remember walking out. I have the memory of walking out feeling really good because I left with the final ticket telling me I had $10. And then I also have the knowledge now as an adult of being like looking back on it and being like, oh man, my dad gave me and my brother $50. And we did sit there all day scratching off fucking shit, but I walked away with $10. I lost $40. That's a negative. That is
Negative.
in the red.
But you won $10. Yeah, exactly.
It feels good.
Exactly. That's how they live, man. And what sucks is most of the people that buy lottery tickets are poor.
Yeah.
Most rich people don't buy
I know.
them. Most of the people that buy them are poor. And
Yeah.
this is going to change my life.
Well, lottery tickets and casinos are designed for most people to walk away with half of what they started with.
You're right. And you know what?
Mhm.
The best way I've thought of putting it, my grandpa told me this. He's like, those casinos, like you see their floors, their buildings, their machines, their light, they're not making that money off of the wins. Right?
Coming from somewhere, y'all.
like think about it. Like, okay. Exactly. Coming from somewhere. Best way to word it. The casino has enough money to pay for all these expensive lights, to pay for all these machines, to pay for all the casino is getting that money somewhere, not from the victories. Therefore, there has to be enough money for them to pay their winners the fucking millions of dollars, tens of thousands, whatever they're paying them. And every single month, they're paying the bills for these things.
Mhm.
Both.
Mhm.
So, like, if you go to a casino to have fun, have fun. But if you're expecting to walk out with more than you went in with, I feel sorry for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the there's honestly, I think there's hey Steph.
Oh, there you
Yeah,
are.
Say
Hey.
what's up.
There's a lot. I think there's a lot of industries that play on that. You know, like purposefully, they're expecting people to not recognize the bad investment that this really is. You know,
Right.
it's a fantastic way for you to have a good Friday night. You know, when you're comfortable and you're safe and you got friends and you're happy and you go out for a couple of hours and you come home and everything's fine. But it is not a lifestyle. But
100%. I know
they
people who let it
perpetuate.
be, and it's a bad one.
Yeah. Well,
They
even
do,
but-
credit cards that give
Yeah.
you 5% cash back or hotel points. They're just
Well,
trying
what
to
are you
encourage you
spending?
to spend more.
Precisely. But I want to
Yeah.
I want to pause. I want to say, hey, what's going on, Stephanie? How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing just fine. How are you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for joining the stream.
What is that?
Hey.
Navigational charts behind you?
I'm sleepless. Yeah, it's backwards though. It's backwards. I can fix that.
So you're saying, just to be clear for all the viewers out there, they should not be using those charts currently to navigate any ships that they're operating. I just want
For a
to.
couple of reasons. One is because it's backwards. Two is because the navigational aids that are shown here, like this little guy there, it should be red rather than green. So if you know.
Why I can't read it anyway, so it's like if I'm trying to navigate my ship off of this, first off, where did I get this ship?
With my dyslexia, I
don't
didn't
know.
even realize the text was backwards until you pointed it out.
I have the weirdest thing where when I hear the word dyslexia, I have to say this. I don't have dyslexia, but I have this thing where sometimes for like 3 seconds I have dyslexia, where like I read a word and I just read it entirely the wrong way, right? And so, like, perfect example, there's a neighborhood close to where I live. I go there regularly. I thought it was called Gregorian Acres. It's Georgian Acres. I could have fucking swore I read Gregorian Acres multiple times. It's Georgian Acres. Georgian, not Gregorian, but I could have fucking swore.
There are some words that I promise y'all, I know how to spell them. I know they're spelled correctly, but they look wrong to me. Okay, so
I know exactly what you mean by that.
I
Different
swear.
thing. I know exactly what you mean.
THESE. 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 I promise you, that's wrong. I know that it isn't, but it is incorrect to me. Every single time I think about it, I want to type I'm sending a message to my mom and I'm just like, oh yeah, these. No, that's not right.
The word whose will never look
I'm
right.
saying this as somebody who, okay, for context, my native language is English. I'm learning 3 other languages, but I'm only conversational in one of them. I have a girlfriend who doesn't speak English fluently. She speaks Spanish. I very regularly, when I talk to people in other languages, mostly Spanish, but whatever. How the fuck do you spell gonna? Is it GONNA? Or is it GUNNA? Because, like, I'm going to tell you, anytime somebody asks me that, I totally act like I know the answer.
That's funny.
But,
Yeah.
like, I just really
I
guess.
get that.
What, like, everybody here on the panel answer on the spot. You're all just speaking English.
I'm O. I'm an
O?
O. I go O on it.
It's a U.
Yeah.
But I understand what
No.
you're saying. No, because
Like, no,
I
but,
understand entirely what you're.
like,
Yeah,
Is it?
I'm
gonna?
with SR on the gonna. It's
I
it's a-
spell it with an O, but I
No.
understand what you're saying about the U.
Always spell it with a U.
Totally.
Well, it's
No,
it's more
Ghana.
of a, that the diphthong is
Ghana.
more about than a.
See, maybe
See, that's
here's
the
the
way I go.
problem
It's
with.
the way I roll.
Okay, so anybody has to learn this with language. You have to be careful with logic-based thinking.
oh
with
my
language.
God,
Yep.
throw it out the
Because
window.
You think, okay, logically, this means this, and this means this, therefore this means this. But like, okay, if you use cough and dough, how are
Yeah.
the end of those words spelled? Right? Like
Exactly
like
the same.
there are a lot of things like as somebody who's teaching a few people how to speak English, like I could think of 4 people off the dome that I'm teaching English right now.
Mhm.
There are a few words where they like, well, why isn't it pronounced this way? And I'm like, I don't fucking know, man. I'm sorry. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I
Well,
don't know.
English is very inconsistent because we've borrowed things from so many different languages.
It's true.
How do you fill out a form? By filling
We've
it
just-
in. Oh yeah, I filled it in and then it's filled
How
out.
come overlook and oversee mean totally different things?
Why do
Like,
they mean different? Right, like so much about English where you're just like, okay, I can't make sense of this. Like the English, like it, as somebody who, again, I'm only fluent in English, but I'm borderline fluent in Spanish, and then I'm basic in Japanese and Swahili. So like I grasp language. English is the fucking most confusing language where you're just like, this doesn't make any sense.
There was something
So-
I read on Twitter that I loved, and I wish I could remember the whole thing. But the best part of it was that English follows other languages into dark alleys, roughs them up, and goes through their pockets for loose grammar.
Yeah, perfect.
So how do you spell fish?
Fish.
That's what I would do.
That's
unless
one
I'm
way. You
unless
could
I'm
also
thinking
do
of the
it.
band.
You could also do it. GHOTI.
Yeah, that is true.
OTI?
Because the way that the
GH as in enough. O as in women. TI as in celebration.
yeah.
Bueno, ahora que de este punto no puedo hablar inglés por mi vida. No más. De este
It's like
punto.
this
Justo
is-
puedo hablar español de este punto ahora.
Just
Porque
saying, you know.
no
This is-
tengo paciencia por inglés porque no hace sentido. All right, I'll stop. But
No idea
really,
what
like,
you
I
just
was
said,
like-
but
I
it
was like,
sounds
I'm not-
like shut up, you dumb.
I was saying I'm never
Yes.
going to speak English again in my life because it doesn't make any sense. That's what
Yeah,
I was saying.
It doesn't
But-
follow every
Follow.
rule that
Yeah.
English tries to teach you as somebody that is learning. Next year in your study, you will find out that not only is that rule incorrect, but also it is unhelpful. Like you will find out very quick. For
Yeah.
instance, I before E except after C is a rule that literally does not matter for 90% of the words that follow that pattern. It's weird that we teach kids that. It doesn't make
before
sense.
E except after C unless it doesn't feel like it.
Yeah, right. It doesn't make any sense. It's like, why would you even teach kids this? Like, because you instantly have to introduce them to all these other fucking concepts
Or
that don't work.
Honestly,
I had to correct my girlfriend on this like fucking every week, but she just like finally got it. It's not headache. Headache.
It's a
Yep.
it's a it's
But
a
think
hard
about it.
yeah.
But
Yeah,
stop.
if you're
Perfect
reading
example
it,
of
yeah.
everything we're talking about here. Logic-based thinking. What are the rules in English?
No,
Okay,
it makes sense.
C is k, but CH is ch.
Mhm.
So
Nope.
when you read
No.
HEAD
No.
A C
honestly,
H,
Mm.
Honestly, we
CH.
could eliminate the letter C entirely and it wouldn't make any difference because it's got two different sounds. So either use a K or use an S. There's no need
So-
for the C at all.
Yeah, you're right. I've had to tell my girlfriend, she finally gets it now, but it's headache. But I
Yeah.
understand that mistake, headache. Like she would say that, but again, she's reading it. And one of the best things I said, and this applies to whether a person's learning English or not, because this wasn't meant in the context of somebody learning another language, but I know people who do. But the point is this: never make fun of someone for mispronouncing a word, because if someone mispronounces a word, that means they read it by reading, or they learned it by reading.
Right.
And so if I say a word in English and I mispronounce it, I mispronounced it, but I learned that word because I was reading it. Right? When I read that, I was like, "It's perfect." That's the quote.
Right. And it's this. It honestly, all of this discussion makes me think of so many people who, at the end of their day, the core of what they're trying to get across relates to the, like, I don't know, transcendent value of language or some bullshit like that. Yeah. And it's like, bro, you realize like 12 years ago, we didn't use that word that way, right? And like 100 years ago, we didn't pronounce it like that, you know? And like 500 years ago, that word just didn't exist, you know? Like what we do with language is this weird mix of like scholarship and also like pragmatism and just kind of like whatever the fuck we feel like. It's we just throw it all into this pot and stir this soup.
Pidgin English, for example, like that'll be spoken in different parts of Africa, and like people know what they're saying, but like, or a better example, patois.
Well, if
Jamaican
American
patois.
English wasn't bad enough, thanks to the internet, on a daily basis, I'm dealing with people in the UK and Australia.
But yeah,
so we'll have
you
three
have
different spellings for the same word, which are all correct in our own country.
But I'll talk to people who are Jamaican, and they type the way they talk. And like when you talk to someone from Jamaica, you realize you're like, they type exactly how they talk. Like, and I have to read that. When I read what they type, it's exactly like listening to them talk, where I'm trying to figure out what they're saying. And for those who don't know, a lot of people get mixed up with Jamaicans. A lot of people think Jamaicans speak English, but they're bad at speaking it. Not true. Jamaicans speak a language called Jamaican patois, which is English based, but also has a French influence and African influence too.
Yeah.
So Jamaican patois isn't just, oh, Jamaicans are speaking English and they're bad at it. That's what people say. It's not true. They actually have their own language, right? And so anyway, that was just relevant.
I think that
down in the islands it's called Biwi.
English.
Yeah.
It's Biwi, British West Indies.
Biwi, I haven't heard
that. Antigua, all of the little islands down there that used to be British colonies. It's interesting. Call it speaking Biwi. I spent some time there.
And again, it's this language is this thing that's fascinating on so many levels. And honestly, I was actually like a couple of hours ago, I was actually talking with some people about linguistics. Just Southeast Asian actually was where we were focused at the time. I know, surprisingly weird, but when we speak, one of the really important things about language is actually trying to get concepts across to each other. So if we don't know what the fuck we're talking about, then it's not valuable. It doesn't help, you know?
Right.
But when we do, we're allowed to do whatever the fuck we want with it. We're allowed to play with it however we want when we understand what we're talking about. And funny enough, because we've had language for so long and so many of us on this planet are good at it in a bunch of different ways, like we get to play with it. We get to do lots of
do.
things,
Well,
and we call things words that seemingly work sometimes, but don't. Like
all right.
my buddy he's native Spanish speaker, but he's from Spain, right? And he's been in the US for the last like 7 years, but I pointed out a car and I called it carro. And he looked at man immediately. He looked at me and was like, "What?"
Oh,
He was like,
man.
"Coche, it's coche." And I was like, "Oh no, okay, I understand, but also like
en español se llama eso, los coches, pero en Latinoamérica es carro. And por ejemplo, en Colombia, en Guatemala, en
Oh.
Panama, Mexico. Sorry.
Yeah, so it's a specific context. No, that's interesting.
In Latin America, they call it carro, but they call it coche in España. España is Spain in español. But yeah, no, like that's the thing. What you really get into. So you, as an English speaker, are probably aware that the way Americans, British, and Australians and Scottish speak English is different, right? But man, what I'd say most Latin American countries aren't as different as, for example, UK and US, right? But Argentina is nothing like any other Spanish speaking country.
Okay. I'm glad you said that. I've heard that. I've heard that the Argentinians speak a little different.
No, but it's not just that their accent, it's their vocabulary.
It's it's the way they construct it.
There are so many words that they use where a Guatemalan or a Colombian or a Mexican is like, I've never used that word for that before. Like it's never meant that. And you know, Spain, obviously, Spain and Latin America are different. Like, so I've been to Guatemala, and a family that I know that I'm like, basically is like my family is Guatemalan. And then my girlfriend and her family, they're Colombian. So I know Colombian Spanish. I know Guatemalan Spanish. And I obviously, living in Texas, being from California, I know Mexican Spanish, right? Knowing the differentiations between them, I'll say Argentina and Spain, so different from the rest of Latin America, because Mexico, Guatemala, Colombia, yeah, they're different, but they're roughly the same, right? But no, once you get to Argentina or Spain, those are very different.
And that's just it's that understanding, I think, that is so super cool, because it feels to me like, if I can use this analogy, it feels like we're in the petri dish right now, you know, and we're getting to participate in the experiment that will one day be, you know, the result of Latin differentiating from Italian, you know, and that's cool. That's so cool to be able to witness and play with. And
did you know? Okay, probably the most two similar languages are Spanish and Italian. I'll give you a few examples. So the word for 7 in Italian is sete. It's siete in español, right? In Spanish, it's siete. Siete, sete. The word for green in Italian, verde. La misma palabra en español, verde. Sete, verde. The word for thank you, grazie. Grazie, gracias. Like Italian and Spanish are so similar that, like, if you speak Italian and if you ask me for directions, I could probably help you out, because I
probably know what you're saying. Yeah.
And you know what? I reached this point where in the past like few months, I'm not fluent in Spanish, but I would say that I speak Spanish. Like I can talk way more than just the basics with people. You know what I mean?
Oh, your conversational Spanish is great, man. Honestly, like listening to you. Yeah, absolutely. You're great with, and that I think that's oftentimes when it comes to learning another language, like especially especially with a lot of these, like do it on your own stuff. Not saying you can't, of course, but obviously there's lots of evidence for that. But with like sometimes with like Duolingo stuff, it's just like they want you to memorize phrases. Whereas what's beneficial is understanding the way that you
Right.
lay out a concept.
Yeah.
The words that you put
Exactly.
together to and it's I think
When
it's
you're
evident.
when you're new to a language, you memorize phrases,
Totally.
and then you just say the phrases you've memorized. And once you get beyond being a beginner, what happens is you're not translating when you hear, you're not memorizing phrases.
Yeah, you're
just
thinking in
talking,
that
right?
language. Right.
So, like, exactly, like, por ejemplo, cuando yo hablo en español, puedo buscar mis palabras en español. Tengo mis conceptos y puedo buscar mis palabras por esos conceptos. So, what I just said was, when I'm thinking in Spanish, I can have my concept and I can find my words for my concepts, right? But if I'm speaking Japanese or Swahili, to be honest, over 90%, I just know, I just have memorized the phrases. Now you get
right.
beyond, now I know what each word means. First you know the phrase, then you know each word, right? So like
Mhm.
mimi ni shane nana furahaku kutana na wewe jina lako ni nani, or I could say jina langu ni shane. So jina is the word for name. Jina langu ni nani. Well, jina is the word for name. So jina langu is the pronoun for mine. Lako is the pronoun for yours. Jina lako ni nani. What is your name? Jina langu ni Shane. My name is Shane. So ni is either is or am. So we have is or am in English. They just have ni.
Yeah.
Jina langu ni Shane.
Mhm.
Right? And then so you have to learn. There's not just, if you don't speak another language, you just think, oh, it's a different set of words. No. Different grammar structure on top of it. So I say, name, mine is Shane. Name, yours is what? So like that like whenever you talk to someone who speaks a different language as their first language, sometimes you wonder, why is this person saying this? And then you realize, you're like, sometimes, like, especially with some of my Mexican friends who are, not fluent in English, I'll realize they'll say something to me in English, but they'll say it with Spanish grammar.
Yep.
And because I speak Spanish now, I understand. I'm like,
Right.
that's
But it
why
sounds
he
weird
says
in
it that way.
English. The construction.
It's like,
Yeah,
I
the
have
English sentence
15
structure
years
is
at this
completely
store.
different from any of
Right.
the Latin-based languages.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because someone will say, I have 15 years at this store, to mean I've worked here for 15 years, right?
Right.
Well, like in English, we wouldn't say that. We would say, I've worked here for 15 years. So if somebody says, I have 15 years I've worked at this store, then you grasp, in Spanish, that's the grammar in which you would say it.
Yep.
Right.
But he's using English words.
And I'm not even kidding. I'm not even kidding, y'all. Earlier tonight, I was chatting with Dr. Ben, and he speaks Hindi. And
Okay.
one of the concepts that he was talking about that was interesting to grasp is that in Hindi, the verb to have doesn't exist. And so again, in Spanish, instead of saying like
Tener.
I am, right, instead of saying like I am this age, right? You say I have this many years, right?
Oh, yeah. So
like
one difference in Spanish. So like in English, we say I am 25. In Spanish, you say I have 25 years.
But in
And
Hindi,
in French, it's j'ai, number of years.
yeah.
Mhm.
And in this language, in this construction of communication, the concept of
How you think?
having doesn't exist. Possession is a thing, holding is a thing, like proximity is a thing, but the idea of like I have doesn't exist. And that's so interesting because it means that the way that you have to construct your dialogue
That you
to
what
explain
to construct?
Yeah. So the way that you
must.
okay, the way that you must construct, the way that you are forced to explain the conception. Yeah, exactly. It throws a wrench into everything,
Right.
and it's like that's so
Best
cool.
example. My question. There you go. Right. Like, yeah. There you go. I got you.
Yeah,
That's perfect. Language
you-
is a fascinating fucking thing.
exactly, and
That's
I
why
think
there was
and-
one argument that a certain Muslim apologist, who thankfully is in prison because he belongs there, yada yada, he was making this argument, and one of the premises was basically wordplay on languages. And this guy, since he had learned some Arabic, felt pretty confident in his language abilities. Well, I'm a little bit like, like when somebody talks about language, I love language. So like, let's get into it. Like, because there's language and there's the linguistics, and there's just understanding the history of a language. So like, as someone learning Swahili, I understand the Arabic roots of Swahili, the Muslim roots too of Swahili, right? So like, for example, for the Arabic example, like you have Kisawahil in Arabic is language of the coasts.
That's what I was just about to say.
You got
That's
it.
where
Bada,
Swahili
bada boom, bada bing, as the Italians say. Not really, kind of, but bada boom, bada bing. No, but seriously, like Kisawahil is Arabic, but language of the coast. And I remember I was talking to a friend of mine who speaks Arabic, and he told me that the way that he says good morning, he's from Morocco. In his dialect of Arabic, he said it's sabato, or no,
which
yeah,
in classical Arabic it's sabaho hayri,
sabaho,
which is
yeah,
sabaho,
sabaho, yeah.
it's-
And when I heard
which means good
sabaho
morning, and it's actually
for good morning,
the Arabic, the classical Arabic is sabaho hayr,
right?
and the reply is sabahan nur, which is
Very interesting.
morning of goodness, morning of light.
This is
That's the
classic
dialect.
Arabic.
way on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's Arabic.
So when I heard sabaho, right, I immediately recognized in Swahili, morning is asabuhi. So habari za asabuhi, right, is good morning. So in Swahili, this is interesting. Habari literally translates to the news, but that's a very bad translation. Habari is kind of like what's up, or like how are you, right? And so if I say habari za jioni, that's kind of like como. That's kind of like buenas noches in español, like good evening, right, in English. Like if I say habari za asubuhi, that's like good morning, but it's more like a question. How is the morning? So habari is the news, but if you say habari za, the habari za asubuhi, morning, you're saying how is the morning? But the person would respond, good, how was your morning, right? So like
Right.
how is the morning is the way they would say it, right? Like habari za asubuhi. So when I knew that there were Arabic roots in Swahili, but when I heard a friend of mine who speaks Arabic say sabaho, I was like, sabaho, sabuhi, right? You know what I mean? Like you just connect.
Right. You could
You're
see
like, you're like, okay, I see the cognate.
Yeah.
Here. And that's a fascinating thing about language. And then, yeah.
And I think one thing you were touching on there is that there are conceptions in other languages that are put into a single word that doesn't exactly translate into other languages.
No
And
siempre
that's
podemos traducir palabra por palabra.
we
We can't always translate word for word.
exactamente. It's so cool because
Yeah.
there's this whole history and culture, and so there's a Welsh word. There's a Welsh word, and I don't think I don't know how many Welsh viewers you have, Shane, but also like
Probably zero, but go on.
I'm probably not going to pronounce it correctly, but still it's fun. But Hyrith is this concept of nostalgia,
Okay.
but for a place you've never been to. Does that make sense?
I get the concept. Yeah.
Right. But we don't have this encapsulation of it in such a way. But where the word comes from is a time period when Wales was incorporated into the rest of the United Kingdom, and the older generation that was raising kids were speaking of a time in their town
that
didn't exist anymore.
That's fascinating. In Japanese, there's shogunai. Have you heard shogunai? Shogunai, roughly, again, not exactly, translates to "it can't be helped."
And
that's
interesting.
It's a
Well,
little
and this
bit,
is part of why English is so messed up, because we keep borrowing words from other languages because we can't sum up the concept in 1 or 2 words.
I just want to hold on. I wanted to address a comment. Was Hopswatch Welsh? Hopswatch
I don't know.
was learning Welsh. I followed him on Duolingo, and it was one of the language he was learning on there. He was Danish.
Yeah.
So yeah. But for those who don't know, and we're gonna always, I'm gonna wait, what's it called? I'm gonna do a fucking heart symbol quick fast for Hopswatch.
Yeah.
R.I.P. Hopswatch, my fucking guy. If anybody hadn't seen, when I got on to what's it called? Last year was my first year celebrating officially Dia de los Muertos, Day of the Dead, en español, right?
Mhm.
And I did a live stream where, so I've live streamed with Hopswatch in the past, right? I did a live stream where I reviewed our live stream in which we had a beer with each other. On his channel, he has a video, a beer with Shane Isgrid, right? And on Dia de los Muertos, I played his live stream on my live stream while I had a beer. So I had a beer with him. Like, he's dead at this point, but I had a beer with him. Like, I had him on my channel having a beer with him beyond his death. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, like, I was able to have Hopswatch with me on my channel. You know, basically, like, I was able to spend time with him.
Yep.
And, like, for a Dia de los Muertos celebration, it was perfect. I was like, we're going to celebrate this guy today. You know what I mean? And we did. So, yeah, I'm just going to quick fucking RIP to Hopswatch, man. No, he was the shit, man.
Yeah, I was
So,
actually one of the first people Hopswatch interviewed on his channel.
hell yeah. I mean, yeah, that's our guy. Yeah, that guy. He got a lot done. He was really about it. So, hell yeah.
Sounds like a wonderful way to honor your friend.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I mean, I know. I thought about the fact that I'm like, okay, is there potential for people to interpret this the wrong way or something? And I was like, no, I don't think so. I think anybody who sees this stream will know that, like, I'm here, like, celebrating, like, I'm hanging out with my friend, you know what I mean? And I was like,
Yep.
you know, for those of us, you know, ain't exactly the fucking, you know, secret elephant in the room. We don't believe in an afterlife, right? So, like, to be able to hang out with somebody in such a way where you're like, I have them on my stream, video of them from a previous live stream on my live stream, that's kind of the closest you can kind of get to having them with you, right? Like, if I were to die this week and you guys were to play conversations where you live streamed with me on your channel, you'd be like, this is the closest I could have to having Shane here. You know what I mean?
As it happens, Shane, I have an elephant in the room.
Elephant in the room.
Okay, hang on. I have to tell this in case anybody doesn't know. There is a conception in Hinduism. There is this idea of the divinity of elephants, but particularly a white elephant that is so sacred, so as to be such a big fucking deal that everybody needs to stop what they're doing. And
Right.
apparently, at some point in the past, it was a thing that if you knew that the other person was Hindu and you didn't like them, you would give them as a gift an elephant, because the caretaking of keeping an elephant alive is so fucking ridiculous.
A lot
that
of overhead there.
It would basically bankrupt you.
Yeah.
And so the phrase "the elephant in the room" came from this like huge burden that everybody knew was there, but also didn't want to talk about, because if I acknowledge that you gave me this fucking elephant, I now have to take care of it. And I don't want to do that because Jesus Christ, you know,
It's
that's
an elephant.
I love that. I love that history. Again, that is the beauty of language, is that we can somehow take this 1,000-year history and put it into a phrase that we all are just like, yeah, it's the elephant in the room, right? And it's like,
One of the
Yeah.
one of the cool things about Semitic languages is that it's the notion of triconsonantal. I said it right. And quadriliteral roots.
Just have to say schmuck. Sorry.
Yeah, that too.
Continue.
But the thing is that concepts are wrapped around three consonants that hold a lot of meaning. Like in Hebrew, Aleph, Dal, Mim is Adam, Adama. It's you inflect it with the vowels, and the meaning
there's
is
context.
still there.
Yeah.
Within the context. So what people don't realize when they read their scripture or their Bible is that Adam is a pun, because wrapped into the meaning of ADM is ochre, earth, man, so
Which
Adam is you could easily translate
explains
it
the story.
as earthling.
Right. And there's
you
there's
wouldn't
actually
know that if you're not a Hebrew speaker or an Arabic speaker, or that someone with familiarity with what those three letters mean.
right.
A big part of why reading the Bible put me off of it is I was living in a community that was 85% Jewish. So 4 out of 5 people I tried to discuss it with had read it in Hebrew.
They knew it was wrong.
I was like, you're so foolish.
Yeah.
I've loved whenever I talk to like Jewish people about the Old Testament, like being raised Catholic, how like I thought I knew what their book was, and then I didn't know what their book was. It's like,
and it's fascinating to see the connection between all of the Abrahamic faiths, right? Because what's super cool is so many of the chapters in the Quran start with letters out of nowhere for no explanation whatsoever. And you know what most of those letters are? A lot of those letters are A, Lif, El, Min, Im. Oh my gosh. Those correspond with so many different Hebrew things that it's just it's like, oh wow, you can clearly see it's not even a question at this point. It's like they're grabbing from this, they're grabbing from that, and they're putting it together to make a narrative that makes sense for them, you know, which is why they bring in Abraham. You know, they talk about Abraham, they talk about Lot,
I've
they talk
always
about
found
Isaac.
it very strange that I understand they have it in common, but like that Judaism, Christianity, and Islam are Abrahamic religions. Now, exactly. Again,
Because
I know that they have Abraham in common, but Abraham, like, what love all the things they have in common. Why is the story a story of Abraham and Isaac, or if you're Muslim, Abraham and Ishmael? Because let's remember that's the divide between.
That's
the Muslims
what
and
he
the
did.
Christians. Let's
See-
pause here.
because the one thing we can agree on, Shane, the
Yo,
one
what's
thing,
up, Darrell?
no matter what, we can argue about all the other things later, but the one thing we can agree on is that a holy man who spoke to God himself tried to
Right.
sacrifice his child and fucked his slave.
Right. Okay. Fuck this slave.
Yeah,
Was
I-
willing.
That's the one thing we can agree.
Okay. Right. And here's the thing. Yes. Okay.
It's
well,
the
that's
foundation of morality.
Before you say what
Foundation.
we agree on. This is what the Muslims, the Jews, and the Christians agree on. Okay.
Right,
Pause.
Right.
No. Not us. No.
Take it from there.
To be clear. Now, the Muslims, the Christians, and the Jews, they believe that
Locked into a
Abraham
bar.
locked into a bar. Yeah. The Muslims not likely. No, let's be clear. So
It's a
they
true
agree that Abraham had two sons named Isaac and Ishmael. They all agree on that. Now, the disagreement. Now, as far as I'm aware, the Jews and the Christians agree that it was Abraham and Isaac, and the Muslims think it was Ishmael.
Yeah.
I could be
Not-
wrong about what the Jews think, but I know
Not
that.
necessarily all the Muslim sects, but in general, yeah.
Okay. As far as I'm aware, the majority of Muslim sects, they believe that it was Ishmael. I haven't heard of any that think that it was Isaac. That's news to me, actually. So
There are
I'll
technically
learn
some.
about that later. So Christians think it was Abraham and Isaac. Muslims think it was Abraham and Ishmael. But the story is the same between all three of these religions, where you have a guy who has a son,
Yep.
and God asks him to sacrifice his son to prove his devoutness to him, his obedience to him, and then at the last minute is like, I just wanted to see if you'd do it.
Yep.
Now
That's true.
that part, here's where I think this is where I get critical of all three religions equally. Is you teach the trait that the willingness to kill his son out of obedience to God was a good thing. That's where I pause. No.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be willing to kill your son out of obedience to something that alleges to be greater than you. That is where I stop and I pause and I go, no,
Well,
there has to be something wrong with you to think that. And then
isn't that at the same levels as the Nuremberg trials when the guy said we were just following orders?
correct, we're just
And I
following
don't think
orders.
You
think
know,
they accepted that response, did they?
Yeah, you
Right.
have to at some point.
Yep.
You have to at some point say to your boss that I can't do this. This is immoral.
Legally, in the United States, it is a federal law. It applies across the states that if you, as a military personnel, are instructed by a higher up to do something that is illegal or immoral, you are required by law to refuse them. That is a law in the United States. And it does apply, and it has been enforced.
What's that law called?
I don't know the exact code. I'm sorry.
I'm
But yes,
skeptical of that one.
I totally understand that, but I
no.
will look this up for you. I have lots of military friends, and also I know that there are
You
court
said
cases on this.
immoral or what was the other word?
Illegal.
But the
Illegal?
Yeah.
yes, but the
If it
immoral
violates
is
the federal
something.
law.
But the immoral is something that is put in there as a legislative word to be flexible, just like high crimes and misdemeanors. But yeah, illegal specifically, if you are conducted to engage in an illegal act,
It just
you
seems
are
like you give a
required.
lot of leeway to people to not follow through on orders if they're willing to justify not
I
following
agree.
Yeah,
those
it-
orders.
I
On the
agree.
basis of
I
finding
have
it
read
illegal.
of cases in
I
the
agree.
Navy about this. It is an actual law.
Okay,
Yes. But I understand your skepticism, and I will try. I will commit to this, even though it's late. I will commit to this to try and find you some court
Okay,
cases on this.
bet
Yes.
I believe you on
Yes.
that. I will say, I thought about what could be an awesome show. Someone told me name for a channel. I think just a show on my channel is I said the phrase, "Pardon my skepticism,"
That
but
is good. No, I like that.
But
That is
yeah,
good.
pardon
no.
my skepticism. So
Pardon my
you
skepticism.
so like,
Yeah,
and like you
I
know
do
what,
like
like
that. That's a good
now
name.
that I think about, like, you guys are saying this. Pardon my doubt for that being true.
Yeah,
No, I get you on that. I get
Like-
you on that. Though.
that is a good
because-
title for a show
and-
about religion and politics.
Yeah,
But you
for
know
sure.
what? I do want to include the occasional thing that does turn out to be true. Like, you know what I've thought about? If we're gonna talk about the OG of conspiracy theories, and when I say OG of conspiracy theories, I'm not saying OG of true conspiracy theories.
Oh,
I'm saying OG of conspiracy theories, mostly false, but like 7% of which are true.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with 4.
I've
4%
actually
of
thought
which
of
are
doing something like that on my
Alex
channel.
Jones.
Oh yeah.
Because Alex Jones has never been wrong. He's just mostly been wrong.
He is the exact epitome of a broken clock being right twice a day. You know what I'm saying?
And you know what? This is what gets you about Alex Jones, though. This is what gets you. Okay, so let's just say, like, I being an autistic philosopher, I tend to break things down into syllogisms where I'm looking at premise, conclusion, right? There's just the right amount of true premises. And you know what I mean? Like, I'm listening to Alex Jones,
I know.
and it's not deductive, maybe, and there's plenty of premises that aren't true. I'm not defending InfoWars. It's just you get those premises that are true.
It
And
was
you're like-
technically raining on that day in that area that he.
Hold on,
and-
though. Like there is some chemical stuff going on with the frogs that's turning the frogs into hermaphrodites. That's not false, but he turns it into like the frogs being turned gay for like the LGBT agenda, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So,
And
like,
somehow these frogs are going to infiltrate our school system and our,
Right.
right.
and so like that's wackadoodle fucking crazy, but there is
I-
some
now,
truth to
the
the
frogs,
sexuality
when they-
of a frog being altered by chemicals. That part is real, and that fucks with you because first
I
you
think
hear
we
it.
need the elephant again.
Yeah.
First you hear it, and you go, definitely none of that's real.
Right.
Everything you said is bullshit. Here's the thing, though. Then the conspiracy theorists find evidence that there's 2 true premises, and they go, you said all of this was false, and look how wrong you were. Here's 2 premises, undeniable evidence, and then you're standing there going, I did say those things were false, and those things did turn out to be true.
Yeah.
So I did kind of fuck up on that. But like, come on, though.
That's
Your
why
gay frogs.
that's why though, honestly, I understand when you get pedantic, Shane. I understand when you want to get real specific about some phrases, because unfortunately
Is Alex
we
Jones right?
seem to be in a time right now where let me say this as non-controversial as possible, I guess. We seem to be in a time where jackass fucking Nazis want to stand out there and take every little fucking ridiculous scenario they can to just, criminalize people, right? And so it's like, okay, so we got to be a little particular when we say some stuff. Obviously, I was joking about that. I said I was going to say it a little bit nicer. I didn't do that, but you get what
You
like
did
we
not. No.
sometimes I have seen some people out there, and it frustrates me because it's like we don't have to make up anything about somebody just rampaging through a Target and being an asshole for no reason, because they're just doing that, And so, like, let's just point to the actual dickheads that are out there. Like, Dennis Prager has a channel on YouTube. Like, we don't need to make up anything. We could just point to him and just be like, oh,
Dennis
look at
Prager claims he has a university.
He says he does.
That's
I'm
what I said.
skeptical.
Claims.
What did you say?
about PragerU? I shared a post. I'm not gonna lie. I was in a bad mood. I read a post by PragerU. Why does God allow evil to exist? And I shared it and said the comments of this post make me ashamed to have ever been a Christian. And I said whatever else I said. And typical Shane fashion. And here's the thing. Somebody left a brilliant comment. Why does God allow PragerU to exist? It's like, that's a fucking good one.
That is
That's
a hell of a question.
Yeah.
Why does God allow PragerU to exist? Like,
I really need to know this with regard to the gay
really,
frogs.
yeah,
I need to. I need some information here.
when
If you just give
PragerU
me-
asks,
give me a moment.
Yeah,
Give me a moment.
PragerU.
Now, when the gay frogs are invading the schools, are there litter boxes there for the gay
Oh my
frogs?
gosh. Oh my. I heard somebody else. Just like the last couple of days say some nonsense.
That is ridiculous. Frogs don't use a litter box.
That's right. That's the ridiculous.
If they're gay, they do.
Well, see,
We
I
all know
just
the gay
explained it in the
frogs are
side
more
chat.
sanitary.
I just explained it in the side chat. They turn the frogs gay. The fish eat the frogs. The men go fishing. The men feed the fish to their kids. Bam, the kids turn gay.
That's
right.
There
That's
you go.
right.
Bada boom,
Well,
bada bing. You got gay kids.
I also like that in what was it, 2021, 2022, all of a sudden a large portion of our population realized that there was female athletics. Like, they had never given a crap about it.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden we're just like, gosh, I genuinely care that much about female shot put. Like, that's a big deal for me. I have just been such a fan of rowing, of crew at a collegiate level. Like, you've never paid attention. You have never once thought about maternity rate in the United States going through the roof. Apparently, this is true. I swear, y'all, this is true. In Tennessee, apparently, in the last few years, more and more people giving birth have just been dying on average. Why is that the case? I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but apparently we're just not doing what we're supposed to do in hospitals. And nobody has given a crap about that until all of a sudden somebody uses a birthing parent, right? Somehow that all of a sudden makes me care about maternity death. Like, it just, again, it's crazy to me that we live in this society where some people will actively refuse, I guess, just to tie it slightly back into our conversation about language. Like, some people will actively refuse any nuance or deeper understanding of terminology in every other aspect of their life. And then on this one subject about the color blue, we just genuinely have to kill each other over it. It's so weird to me. And
Right.
I think it's just disingenuous. I really do. It's just people just trying to be dickheads.
It is. It's people on the far right trying to stir up emotional issues so they don't have to talk about things like the economy.
Because, man, it'd be
Or
a shame
anything
if
else.
It'd be a shame if more people started having enough money to actually pay for their rent and groceries, right? Because
That would
that'd
be
be
a
it.
damn
That'd be a
shame.
problem.
Well,
That'd
if
be
people are comfortable, nobody's going to be desperate enough to take the shit jobs.
Yeah. Yeah, we did supposedly, I'm not 100% sure. Supposedly we missed our mark this quarter in the US of adding new jobs to the economy, just by a little bit, not by that much, but it's the first quarter in the last handful that has been the case. But they didn't seem to talk very much about the rise in wages or lack thereof. They didn't seem to talk about the actual ability for you to spend your dollar, your hard-earned dollar, on valuable things in the society. And it's you know, it's easier to focus on some things that at the end of the day are just, again, it's like all of a sudden everybody gives a shit about women's sports. Like,
Yeah.
I'm genuinely excited about the Women's World Cup coming up, you guys.
Well,
It is the one sports team I care about.
Right. Well, when people say like suddenly interested in women's sports, somebody doesn't have to be interested in sports if like what you're referring to is thinking that like trans athletes have an advantage or something. Because somebody could say like,
I am genuinely excited about the fact that the Stanford sailing team won the intercollegiate sailing U.S. intercollegiate sailing championship like 2 weeks ago. And
cool.
the Stanford sailing team consists of like 8 women, 2 guys.
Right.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, sailing.
It's very
cool.
cool.
I'm just saying,
I
like,
was
with
so
respect to
psyched.
the
And
conversation,
the competitors, the two people, the 2 teams that were on the water were both chicks.
That's cool.
And
That's cool.
they just dominated. They walked away.
Yeah.
With the.
I'm just saying that with respect to what Secular said, that like there's no inconsistency between like not really caring about women's sports and acknowledging an advantage between like trans.
I agree with the point you're making. I think, unfortunately, the majority of people that are trying to make that point are doing it disingenuously because they're basing it on this sincere desire to protect women's sports. If that's where you're claiming the crux of your argument lies, and that's not the case based on a lot of evidence, then I would argue that that's disingenuous. Just argue from a different position. Just argue from a position of, hey, this is where the actual basis of my argument lies. Because we can talk about the science, we can talk about biology, we can talk about testosterone, estrogen. Happy to have those conversations. But when somebody comes to me and says, like, for instance, when somebody comes to me and says that what they're genuinely caring about is whether or not child SA is perpetuated, and then they want to criminalize activity that has never been associated with that, whereas there's literal organizations in the United States that are getting tax refunds and they're actively doing that, right? And that's where the disingenuous value comes into me. Does that make sense, man? Like,
no, I get that. I feel like it's kind of, a lot of people put it in this like, I don't want to like minimize it to a false dichotomy thing, but like if somebody
I think that's fair.
Right, like if somebody says, I'm concerned about children being sexualized in, for example, I don't think drag shows necessarily provide sexual environments for children, but a lot of them do. And a lot of people, because they want to defend the LGBT crowd, they defend necessarily any drag show where children are present, right? And you end up with these people who say like, well, if you have a problem with children being in drag shows, why don't you have a problem with children being in Hooters? And I'm like, well, actually, I do have a problem with children being in Hooters too.
But I feel like
this is one or the other. I think
this is a more sincere discussion. And that's where I think a lot of the problem is when you see somebody like Steven Crowder sitting out there on a college campus with the sign that becomes the meme, right?
Right.
I don't believe that there is the genuine care. Again, like we were talking about earlier about this well-being being a concept that is pervasive throughout everything. There are people who purposefully engage in this conversation. I mean, specifically right now with LGBTQ stuff, right? I mean, I'm in Tennessee. You're in Texas. We feel it all the time. And like they are purposefully engaging in a disingenuous way. And that's where that's a huge problem, because I feel like if you genuinely are engaging in this conversation of medical ethics and scientific data and studies and so forth, well, that's a totally different conversation. But if somebody just wants to come out and just goes, I want to protect children, but then you're supporting the Catholic Church,
it would be wise to recognize the nuance. And it would be wise to do your research. For example, I just talked about the Stanford College. Now, sailing is mostly co-ed. It's not gendered. There are women's competitions.
I mean, sailing, I don't see any reason for it not to be co-ed. Sailing.
Mostly based on the fact that sailing is a very equipment-dependent sport.
Right.
So it doesn't matter whether you're male or female. If you weigh a certain amount and your stature is such, there are certain pieces of equipment you simply won't be competitive in.
Right.
So when you start talking about sport, about women's sport, whether the women are trans or cis, in the case of sailing, you're not talking the same language.
Yeah, I would agree.
I mean, I know cis women who could not sail a full rig laser,
because the differentiating factors in the sailing teams are going to be the number of people, the weight of the people, the sailing, the equipment, like you said.
In collegiate sailing,
right?
Generally,
so in that sense, it differs from like MMA
dinghies,
where I would say like in sailing, I don't think a trans athlete or a cis athlete, like there's any difference or any advantage or anything. But like in MMA, I'm not going to sit here and pretend otherwise, right?
Can I? So
even in traditional men's sports, it's like no guy under 6 foot tall is ever going to make it into the NBA.
Right. It doesn't matter.
They are,
but unlikely. The likelihood, right?
They'll have to be really good.
Let me ask this, Shane. Let's take, for argument's sake, right, that there is a difference. We'll just accept that, right, from the beginning, an advantage, right? Do you think that there are ways to, because I think you would agree that all people, no matter what category, there's a spectrum, right? No matter where you sit, trans, cis, white, black, Jew, Christian, doesn't matter. The spectrum, right? That is comfortable. It fits this label, right?
Right.
Would you say, again, granting that there is just this inherent advantage, would you say that there is a way to, I don't want to say counteract, but account for and put people back into that range that makes sense?
Into sports, right? Yeah, no, I think.
And
so.
if we've accomplished that, then we're good.
Depending on the sport. So, like for example, when we talk sailing, I don't think your gender makes a fucking difference, or your biological sex is different. So, like sailing, whatever you are, you are.
A little bit different there than it is in other sports. Right. Sure, fine.
So with MMA, this is my position on MMA. I'm not somebody who invalidates the gender identity of a trans woman, for example. So a trans woman, like I'm aware of the fact that there's psychological evidence, and beyond just psychological, you could say neurological, there's physical evidence in a brain that the brain of a trans woman further resembles the brain of a biological woman than it does a biological man. So a trans woman would be a person who's in a biological male body, but
Brains are biological.
their brain further resembles a woman, though, right? So that person,
So that part of their biology, by your own argument, is female.
I haven't finished my sentence though. But what I'm saying is that person, I don't. So like the person, if they identify as Jessica, she, her pronouns. I'm calling her Jessica, and I'm saying she, her. Sure. But if she's biologically male, I don't think there's an inconsistency.
Except for that part of her brain.
With the exception of the part of her brain. Or no, the brain, the part of her brain is the exception. So her body physically, biologically is male, but the brain is the exception, right? So she's female because of the brain. Because the brain is the strongest part. Your mental, right? So there's nothing inconsistent with saying I can validate this person's gender identity as a woman while still holding that as a male. I could say a sport should be based on biology rather than identity. And a league should be based more on a few factors, not merely biology, but like if we have a league of people, the people within the league should be fair. It should be roughly the same.
And they should be making the decision, not people sitting in state legislatures.
Can I posit this thought instead of it being biology, we talk about physiology instead, because I think biology is
part of it.
But I think biology is something that ultimately the vast majority of things that you would say matter, that make a difference in this criteria for us to decide one way or the other, would be something that you would agree could be, again, accounted for in a manner that would put people in well within the range that we would all consider like perfectly acceptable.
I'm going to reframe your question in my own words.
Yeah,
please. To confirm that I understand.
Yeah, go ahead.
So your point is, my point is that there's a physiological difference between the sexes
as opposed to
biological. And thus, if the crux of my argument is the physiological difference, then the crux of my argument is the physiology, not the biology.
Yeah, I think so.
I would agree. I would agree with that, because I would say if you're biologically male, but you don't go through like male puberty because of estrogen treatment or whatever, and
there's a lot of other factors,
and we can demonstrably show that in a league you would fit within like a female league, then I think you have a better argument on that case. But you have the extreme where like and I want to stay from like legislators, and I don't agree with like what the far right thinks or anything like that. But you had a politician who was asked if Mike Tyson, this was the question. If Mike Tyson identified as a woman, should he be allowed to identify in women's sports?
Tomorrow? No.
And the response was, the short answer is yes. That's batshit crazy. Mike Tyson belongs in a male league no matter what he said. If tomorrow Mike Tyson says, I identify as Michelle, we can call you Michelle, but you're boxing in the male
Totally
league.
understand. Totally understand where you're coming from. Can I, real quick, which is, and then please, Stephanie, please take this from me. But let's say Michelle.
I would never take anything but a gumball from me.
They're only marbles, I swear.
I know.
If Michelle said tomorrow she was woman and went through various physiological changes, that would probably, I'm just guessing here, matter more whether Michelle went through male or female puberty and even chromosomes, right? I think at the end of the day, there is an understanding amongst the vast majority of people that what you're saying between somebody like Mike Tyson who clearly has had decades of advantages in a specific physiological medical understanding in terms of creating muscle structure and fibers and blah, 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 blah. Like, yeah, just tomorrow, okay, I understand what you're saying.
See,
Like,
well,
maybe
that's
he
my
doesn't
point is
get to
that
run,
right.
but
That is kind of the extreme.
those
So,
things,
like,
but
yeah.
those things, in no way, shape, or form are what is common amongst individuals that are trying to participate in sports,
well,
right?
It has though, because it's been enabled to the point where, and I wish I was more equipped with the names, for example, but there was a powerlifting competition that I know took place in Canada, and I do wish, as a skeptic, I was more equipped with the name or whatever. But this guy, who to this day still identifies as a male, for a day or a week or whatever it was, for
that's
a
an
short
asshole,
period
right?
of time.
Yeah.
Okay, but I'm not
there's
disagreeing
no
that he's an
doubt,
asshole, but my point is this. He identified as a woman, entered into a women's league, competed amongst women, and then just went right back to being identified as a man.
Yeah.
My problem is allowing a criteria which justifies that, because I don't think that there's any inconsistency with saying, like, a lot of people say that if you don't think that, like I said, Mike Tyson should fight in a women's league,
Sure.
people want to pair you in with the transphobic crowd that thinks that a trans woman isn't valid in her identity. And people want to people look at it binary like that, right? Like, either you're to the extent that you think Mike Tyson should compete in women's sports if he chooses to, or you're a transphobe who thinks trans women aren't women.
Right.
And I'm somebody who thinks trans women are women, and I recognize that
And there's nuance.
that there's nuance between,
Yes.
like, gender and sex have relation, but they're not necessarily intertwined.
Yeah.
And I'm just somebody who's saying that clearly there should be a criteria beyond, well, Mike Tyson claims he's a woman, so he should be in women's sports.
And I think,
Can I?
and please, I'm sorry, please.
Can I just jump in here? I think that in all of these discussions, you need to take into consideration the instances you bring up, Shane. I mean, obviously, if when you're talking about athletic competition, first of all, athletic competition isn't fair. So there are going to be physiological differences that are going to confer certain skills to people who possess different phenotypes.
With each athlete, right?
For each athlete.
Usain Bolt's genetics are amazing.
Which is to say, your chances of success as a professional basketball player are greater if you're taller. So
right,
the fairness thing is really difficult, especially at the top level. And at the top level of competition, things like training, diet, practice regimen, all of these things come together to make for a successful performance, right? Now, just hold on just a sec. You know, the thing when we talk about sex is we got to get beyond the question of what is a man, what is a woman. Matt Walsh pulled that out because it does do that binary thing and forces us into that conversation. But what makes up sex? External genitalia, internal reproductive organs, structure of the gonads, endocrinological, nuclear, chromosomal, psychological, and social sex. All of these things together are how a person's sex is perceived and experienced in the real world. So how many you no single index or criteria can positively identify or signify the appropriate sex for an individual
Right.
who
It's a
has
combination.
this combination of characteristics. So it's really difficult, and this is what sports at the elite level have struggled with for many years. Since 1998. Before 1998, it was a combination of physical examination. And mind you, all of these things applied only to female athletes.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Well, that does make sense because female athletes wouldn't have the unfair advantage in like a male league, right?
That is the presumption.
That's the presumption, I would say. There is some evidence, though. There is some evidence that in some sporting competitions, for sure,
Yes.
the only reason that we segregated them by sex or gender, right, is because women started dominating them. And I know that may
Not
disagree.
basketball.
Not basketball, not
basketball.
MMA.
Right,
I'm totally agreeing with you on that, bro.
But
totally.
Maybe running, maybe.
But that, and there are other things too. Archery was actually something that was a big deal,
that.
right?
Women are more patient.
And so like this is
females, I should say.
I
women
think,
is the construct. Females, yeah.
I think what both of you were saying right there ties really well into each other. And I'll just say this, I know I'm putting the burden on myself here, you guys, philosophically, but I'm going to do it anyway, which is I genuinely believe that properly applied skepticism leads you to a place of secular humanism and LGBTQ rights. I believe you get to a place where, yes, you ask these very nuanced and specific questions, Shane, and when assessing them properly, asking for the evidence that gets you to a conclusion, you come to this place of saying, okay, the things that are important to me in terms of potentially giving somebody an advantage outside of the normal range of people participating in whatever field of sport we're participating in, all of those can be accounted for in a way that is completely inclusive. I really do feel that. Like, properly applied skepticism will lead you to that result every single time because, like I said earlier, I think at the end of the day, the issue isn't your chromosomes. The issue isn't your chromosomes when we're doing hurdles.
That's one element.
There's an element, but the factor that at the end of the day is going to cause all of the individuals that are rational, humanistic-minded folk to say, okay, this seems a bit untoward, right? This seems a bit uneven on the scales there. All of those factors can be accounted for and are on a level in sport that now has been for decades. Well, but the Olympics have had these criteria for almost 2 decades now. And they've effectively worked this out.
I would say essentially
2006
there exists
2006 to 2020.
Right.
Yeah.
And well, I would say essentially
there's been a steady regime.
Prior
to 2006, there were a number of other criteria, including karyotype. And the problem with karyotype is that a number of what you would call biological women were tested, and
it just naturally,
for all intents and purposes, they are women. They did not have elevated testosterone levels. They did not have.
Or there was
any of that other crap.
Running competition where they judged it by testosterone levels, and cisgender women had high enough testosterone levels that they were
only people that got booted from the Olympics this year, this past Olympiad, were 2 African runners, women, cis women with no
problematic.
No issues in their Stereotype.
And so I feel like we've kind of come to this place where clearly when the criteria of the differentiation in sports comes up, right? Two extremes do exist. And one extreme is what you were describing, right? And your previous example with the African runners. And another example of the same category, like I would talk about,
Totally agree.
cisgendered women whose testosterone levels were high, so they were therefore disqualified from women's sports. So there you have an extreme, or
We
at
were
the very
talking about
least,
the same thing
a
there.
bad criteria, right?
It just so happened that the two women I was talking about were, in fact, from Namibia and I believe Angola.
But then the other criteria extreme would be the one that says Mike Tyson could compete in women's sports.
Tomorrow. Totally.
Right.
Tomorrow.
And that's
And
Which
so-
nobody,
Right. Which no steel man of the
No-
argument.
Which,
No.
like,
is
let's be
that.
clear.
no
The middle ground
sporting,
fallacy
no-
is specifically to say that the middle ground, the truth lies exactly in the middle of the
Of course.
extremes.
Of course.
I'm not saying that the truth
Yeah.
lies in the middle of the extremes. I think truth has a left-leaning bias, is the way that I put it,
I would
right?
agree.
And so, right, the left-leaning bias, it leans to the left. But let's not let that distract us from the extremes. And part of the reason is because extremes push each other, right?
Sure.
Like people hearing people say Mike Tyson could compete in women's sports. That
They're stupid.
very right. People
That's
hearing
stupid.
that think, okay, well, anyone who defends trans athletes thinks that.
Polarization
right? You see what
leads
I'm
to more
saying? You
polarization.
see what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yes.
So that
Violence
kind of
begets
thing,
violence. Yes. 100%.
Violence begets violence. So
100%.
right. So we need to be careful to obviously be more cautious of the opposition than the extremity of our own side. But in doing so, not forget that the extremity of our own side further motivates our opposition.
And
I understand that, but I would say that as having lived with this issue on an official basis for the last 3 years within the national governing body of a sport and going through all of the machinations, political and otherwise, to try to come up with a rational discourse.
Right.
The problem is that the extreme position is already established by, and I'm gonna perhaps say something offensive here, by men's desires not to have their asses kicked, and their presumption that they never will be beaten by a woman.
Are you saying toxically masculine men are super
No, I'm not saying
egotistical, Stephanie?
toxically.
Hang
I'm
on.
just saying there's a
No,
propensity for
easy.
guys
I
to
would say-
believe
Yeah.
that they're better. And with regard to transgender women, because these discussions never come up
Well-
about guys.
Right.
Trans
Well, that would
guys.
be true for any guy who's opposed to trans women competing in the men's league.
Yep.
Then I would agree with what you said.
Oh, there's
Right, because then you would
no,
have
because it does work both ways. See, this is what I'm
Mhm.
trying to.
yeah.
what
The argument.
you're saying
the
is
argument
men,
against.
but you're saying men are afraid of getting their asses kicked. So for men to get
They
their asses,
presume an advantage that is not demonstrable, and the comparison.
but what I'm saying is, for them to get their asses kicked, they'd have to be competing in the leagues with the person, right?
no, it's part of it. I guess I wasn't very articulate in saying where I was
Okay.
coming from. There's the presumption on the part of males that they are always going to be better in athletics than women are. And there is also the implied presumption that trans women who started male retain that advantage.
Right.
And the science does not bear that out.
And because of there is a lack in this discussion, there's a complete lack of give a shit when it comes to trans men athletics. Like
Exactly.
that concept isn't something that is discussed. And again, that's where
that
I
makes
think
sense though, because like if the concern is the biological male, again, not gender, just going with the biological male having the advantage, right?
right.
Then it makes sense that the person expressing that concern isn't going to be expressing concern over biological females entering into men's sports,
But
because it would make sense to say, if you think that biological males have the advantage,
somebody
why would you
going
be
to
afraid?
male is going to have that advantage, right? They're going to be able to.
Right. So that would be
Okay.
the fear, is the biological male competing in the women's sport.
So can I?
But why would that person be concerned about a biological female who's a trans man competing in the men's sports?
Because here's my pushback on that. Okay, is because what it seems to me in that instance you're saying is that somehow you are accepting that the lack of ability as somebody who starts off their life as female, who goes through female puberty, let's say, right? The disadvantage can somehow be compensated for. But the advantage can never be negated. There is something inherent in your core that will never be changed. But yet, doing essentially the exact same procedure on the other side gives you somehow the ability to surpass all of these boundaries. Do you see that? Do you see how it's not equal on both sides? It
wouldn't be equal if the concern is that one side has an advantage over the other, right?
But hang on.
But then it wouldn't be inconsistent to have a concern over one side falsely identifying as the other.
No. But that's not where the concern is. And I agree with you on that.
Okay.
No. Hang on. I agree with you on that. And this is where I come back to where I think the insincerity lies in that argument, is because nobody in the Steel Man, nobody is actually arguing that dickheads that are lying get to compete. Nobody's actually arguing that. What we're arguing is that
but they do, because we agree with the Canadian example of the powerlifting. You agree that was a dickhead.
Yes,
he was allowed to compete.
Yes, and anybody that's standing on the side that says Mike Tyson tomorrow gets to fight in female boxing is clearly not participating in the conversation sincerely.
Right. So where I'm trying to find is where the difference between that and what you're saying is.
So
I'm trying to find
what I'm saying is that the argument regarding the argument is actually two different arguments, and it's being falsely laid out as this sincere argument that you're laying out about somebody disingenuously trying to engage in athletics, right? That person is obviously stricken from the record. Bad people will do bad things. We're all okay with that. We're all comfortable with that. But what we're actually trying to argue on the Steelman side of saying trans women get to compete in women's sports, trans men get to compete in men's sports, is that sincere individuals do not have the advantage that other people are sincerely worried about. And the reason that and why I'm equating that back to trans men versus trans women in this conversation is supposedly going through female puberty puts you at a marked inherent disadvantage physiologically to individuals that have gone through male puberty. But somehow that gap can be overcome. Again, all sincere individuals. None of these people are lying dickheads. Right. But somehow that disadvantage that female puberty gives you, again, I don't believe that, but somehow that can be overcome so that trans men can compete with cis men. But that gap cannot be somehow overcome to disadvantage the cis men, or I'm sorry, the men who, the individuals who went through male puberty, to put them back in that. What I'm saying is, it seems as if the criteria is completely equal on both sides, and yet we're special pleading that one side works and one side doesn't, even though they're exactly the same. There's
See,
no.
I don't think they're exactly the same though.
But so how then can a trans man compete fairly with cis men? How have they overcome that supposed disadvantage?
So a trans man, in theory, could compete against cisgendered women and other trans women.
No. Men, cis men, trans. Nobody's arguing. Nobody seems to be
Right.
arguing from the side of
Right. I mean,
trans
I'm
women
not. I'm not saying I think there's an unfair
No, I know.
advantage. I'm
I know.
saying, I mean, for to be more fair to that athlete.
But if trans men are competing with cis men, do you think there's a problem? Is that an issue? Is anybody arguing?
Trans men competing
Yeah.
with cis men in MMA? No. But trans
Right.
women competing with cis women, I think potentially yes.
Okay, but so I think even that really is that's I think that's a good example right there, because I think what you're saying is that there is something about being a trans man that puts you in this realm that is closer to cis men when it comes to this supposed advantage, which again I think is physiologically based as opposed to the broader biological.
What do you mean by
category.
closer to? Like,
So
in
in
terms
that
of gender or physiology?
physiology, I think gender.
I would say no.
I think gender and sex
wait,
and
actually-
chromosomes. So I think that's what we do. I think that's the biggest thing that people give a shit about is if so. So let me put it this way: if somehow, theoretically, because I know this is true, I know some doctory people. They've told me this repeatedly, that female puberty, when it comes to growth, does not express that physiologically as much as male puberty. Tends to be the case for whatever reason. Homo sapiens, males grow a little bit taller than females do on average. But here's the thing. What if we had a trans man who was 4'9", who we could make them taller? If we can make them 6 foot tomorrow, there's no disadvantage that they've achieved, right? Which would be the exact same criteria for somebody who was 6'7" that we could shrink to 4'5". It would be the exact same. It's a physiological issue.
Because if you're growing somebody, then the question becomes, to what degree are you allowed to grow somebody beyond what they naturally could achieve? Until it becomes unfair, because even if we're talking,
we're assuming that they're sitting in that range.
Listen, but even if we take gender out of the entire conversation, I could be stronger than I am if I take steroids, right?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean like, okay, well, this is how strong I could be with steroids,
right,
and this is how strong he could be without steroids.
Correct.
Therefore, this is a fair competition. That doesn't really add up.
I disagree on that. I disagree on that. And that's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that there seems to be a certain set of criteria when it comes to sports that we say is, because we've currently got this separated by male, female, and we say there is a certain set of attributes that makes us feel uncomfortable about these individuals participating with these individuals because the criteria isn't exactly the same. We're using similar criteria.
But it doesn't have to be exact though.
Falls out of
Can I just add this point in real quick? So
please.
If you have a basketball league and this league is second graders, right? They're going to be roughly 8 or 9 years old.
Sure.
And some of them might be 7, right?
Sure.
But
And some of them might turn
like
10 a month into it.
right. The fact that they're not all born the same exact day
Right.
doesn't mean we can't reasonably say, yeah, but we should have the second graders together.
I agree,
right?
and I think that fits with what I was saying, because I think we would both agree that testosterone level and estrogen level, for instance, just as a specific thing, is not clear cut across the board. I bet if the four of us tested our estrogen and testosterone levels, cis
I can
male,
tell you
trans
exactly
woman,
what mine
it'd
are.
be all different. It'd be all different. We could test a million cis men, cis women, trans men, trans women, and there would be a range that we would fit into. And I think that agrees with exactly what you were saying. There is second graders as a concept that has a few different criteria that doesn't exactly fall down to when were you born?
Like in 5th grade, I competed in a
tall are
middle
you?
school league in basketball because of how
Yeah.
tall I was. And that's fine. But a short middle schooler shouldn't be competing amongst
But what if they
elementary
can
school.
compete? What if that's the only criteria that they fall short on, and their free throws are better than every other fucking asshole that's in the 4th grade?
That's a better reason for them not to compete amongst the elementary students.
That's a better reason for them to compete in the higher levels. And that's what I'm saying. There is,
Right.
because of the fact that it is a range of criteria.
No, but
and
right,
there-
no, but my
physiology.
point was, me being tall for my age, I competed in a league that was for
Higher
older
up.
kids, right?
Absolutely.
That's fine. That's not a concern. But if you let a kid who is older into the elementary school league on the basis of how short he was, that would be problematic.
Totally understand, because let's just say, for simplicity math's sake, there is 5 criteria for second graders competing in second grade basketball, right? And the
Right.
only one that this person seems to hit is the fact that they are under 6 foot.
Right.
There's 4 other criteria they haven't even come close to getting into the range of.
Here's the other-
Whereas we've got somebody else who is technically not a 4th grader. They're a second grader.
See,
But
and
in terms of height, in terms of handling, in terms of shot ability, in terms of stamina, in terms of this, in terms of that, they crack it, man. And so that's why I think it's something that truly, at the end of the day, any of the criteria that is problematic, that I think, again, reasonable, skeptical people will agree on is problematic, all of those can be accounted for in many, many ways that in reality are actually just commonplace. Like, it's just common.
Another one of those criteria is, mental ability and
Absolutely.
and all of that stuff.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
another criteria.
Sure.
But I think a critical point here is that the people that should be making those decisions are the people that are administrating the sports.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
And not a committee of uninformed people that don't know the stakeholders, and especially the athletes themselves, the children.
I shouldn't have
Talking
any
about
say.
children.
I shouldn't have any
Or-
say in who gets to compete in shot put next
Right.
Olympics.
And
because I
this
don't
is
know
actually
yet.
the point that I was trying to get on for the last 2 minutes is that when this conversation comes up, it's the topic that came up. So I said what my opinion on it is. But normally, if somebody asks me my opinion on this and I say everything that I've said here, people have this thing of like, oh, all of a sudden you care about women's sports. I don't give a shit about women's sports. But if you do ask me, this is why my opinion on it is. But I don't care about sports. Sports aren't I couldn't tell you who the last NBA game was between the NFL game. I forget what season, you know what I mean? But my
sure
thing is
it is.
when this conversation comes up, right? I partake in conversations philosophically, and people, it comes up, it's on my channel, I'm not shy of what my opinion is or to engage with others. But then it normally becomes all of a sudden you care. No, I don't really though.
Well, I think that was a fair pushback on what I said, and I think what I said applies more to individuals in that, like Kent Hovind is not sincere when he talks about archaeology. He's not. We know this.
Ken Hovind
you
isn't
know?
sincere when he talks about anything.
At anything, right? How do you know he's lying? He's speaking, right?
Yeah,
But,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
lips are
How do you know he's
moving.
lying? His
Lawyer,
lips are
you know.
moving.
right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So
His
like,
lips are
I think
moving.
a lot of the individuals that are out there, like that are pushing these narratives are in reality taking a stance that is disingenuous, and the true steelman of the opposition, let's just say, is one that actually is accounted for. I think is much more something that is much easier to figure out, honestly, than a lot of the antagonists are making it. And I think that's where
Yeah, I
we've
agree.
gotten unbalanced almost in this argument, because like, let me put it this way. It's frustrating when we have somebody that says, hey, I think everybody should be able to speak their opinion in public, right? And then we have other people that are Nazis that are advocating for like killing people in public, right? And it's
Right.
like, okay, so the argument is not exactly equal in that sense, right?
Right.
Like, do Nazis technically freedom of speech for Nazis? Like, technically, I mean,
Right.
yes, but also
Sure, Mark Stokie, that's fine.
right. But also,
Go ahead.
let's not be let's not have rose-colored glasses when it comes to the difference in arguments there, right? We've got
Right.
some individuals that are saying freedom of speech is an important value, and there are some individuals that are actively using that principle to call for the eradication of anybody else getting that
Right.
value.
And
I don't think that's where any of us have been tonight.
Right. And
but
and
I
that
think
well,
that,
but that gets to like, and on an empathetic level, I understand this. If you hear somebody say a certain phrase,
sure.
and you've heard that phrase amongst a certain group, it's completely normal in the human psychology for you to ponder, is this a member of that group, right? So like, perfect example, white supremacists will often use the term red pill, right? That
Which
doesn't
is
mean
actually quite funny.
I
Yeah.
know there's a lot of
but that doesn't mean that if someone uses the term red pill, they're a white supremacist. But
Sure.
if you use that term, I might like kind of start to question like what you think. And I'm going to pay attention to
I
the rest of
understand
what
that.
you say. And so I understand like if I say, I don't know if you want to call it pushback or whatever you want to call my opinion on like what we've said about trans athletes, where there's at least some skepticism about the extremities. I feel like some people, they then see me as maybe you've heard a certain phrase I've said or a certain particular premise that I've used.
Sure.
And you've heard that used by some people who are like anti-trans or something like that. And it does make sense psychologically to like wonder if I'm in that category at first, right?
Make the connection.
I don't wonder at all, Shane. I think, I think you're, it says right here, Shane the skeptic.
Thank
So
you. Things aren't always as they appear. I have messages with
I don't
people.
think you're in that category at all.
Thank you. And you know what?
But
I'm
I
gonna be
also,
honest.
but here's
Right.
here's my problem, right?
Right.
And as someone again working with a national governing body of my sport to come up with an actual policy in the real world written down so that we can determine who gets to go to the Adams Cup, which is the women's national championship, right? So I have to partake in discussions about who gets to qualify, right?
Yeah, and
so that having what's incredibly frustrating in carrying on these conversations is the level of knowledge and the depth of study that not just my governing body has gone through, but that every single World Federation that is represented at the Olympics is having to go through at this point in time to determine eligibility criteria
Yeah.
in the real world. And it's very difficult to do so when the conversation seems more politically motivated than
Right.
scientifically motivated.
I'm on board with that. And I also think kind of like this brings up a point Cycling made earlier. Like if the point that I make is if the concern at any in a particular sport, particular league is one physiological advantage over the other, then that's the difference, not the biology.
Yes.
So
Yes.
like
That's correct.
Yes.
right. So like
Exactly
Yes.
right.
if it be the case that you have 5 people who are physiologically within the same, let's say, league making properties, right? Then
Mhm.
yeah, I think that's what matters at the bottom of the like the end of the conversation. That's what it comes down to.
So what
And
you need to
yeah.
do is what we need to focus on is what the question is
Yeah.
from the get-go.
The far right has framed it
is
poorly, on purpose.
is the question that is it a fair comparison to compare trans women to rather men to women, you know, cis men to cis women, in making a determination about either trans men or trans women.
Right.
When really the comparison you're looking for is trans men to trans men, trans women. I'm sorry.
Cis. No, I know what you're
Trans
men to cis men.
to cis
Yep.
men.
Yep.
Trans women to cis women. With
Yeah,
regard to athletic ability, dangerous strength, etc., and so forth.
Yeah.
Because really that's the
criteria.
that needs to be. That's the criteria you need to focus on, because we're not talking about integrating men's and women's sports in most circumstances.
And you know
what
what?
we're talking about is, you know, it's all good old Matt Walsh. Who gets to be defined as a man? Who gets to be defined as a woman? For the purposes of safe, fair competition.
Right.
So you need to focus on that rather than it's in this conversation is so focused on men versus women. And what makes it problematic is that if you exclude trans women on the basis of an a priori assumption that men
versus women
are stronger than women,
it's a category error.
And what you're basically saying is trans women are men, regardless of any sort of medical intervention that changes fundamentally a number of physiological capacities, some of them very quickly. One of the most important in the context of sport is the VO2, the oxygen carrying capacity of your bloodstream,
which matters a lot, honestly.
Women do not have as much hemoglobin running around, so they can't carry as much oxygen, can't get to the muscles, right? So, however, what they are good at is endurance stuff because they're able to do it longer. And that particular, this is just one, that particular physiological thing changes measurably within 6 months of cross-sex hormone treatment.
Right.
And
And I just like, I feel like there's kind of this elephant in the room too, where like,
Oh wait,
pull it up,
there
pull it up.
is.
another pull the elephant up. I feel like now, with keeping in mind what the genetic fallacy is, I feel like in being a proponent of democracy, I think the least valuable voice in the conversation about women's sports is a cisgendered male. So as a cisgendered male voicing my opinion with respect to the topic, right? Like
I feel it though, bro.
you know what I'm saying, right? Like
I totally
Yeah, but
understand.
everybody's got an opinion.
I totally understand.
everybody's got
but
an
I don't think
opinion.
we should be excluded from the conversation
Oh,
just
absolutely
like that.
not.
But at the same
I
time,
know.
like,
There's
yeah,
a
come
different-
on, like my
I-
opinion on the fucking matter.
I don't
Come
have
on.
to exclude myself from the conversation, but I want to be careful on like, because some people tell me, and in some cases it can come off as a good thing, but like some people tell me that I kind of speak with authority. You know, like somebody told me they feel safe when I talk because they just feel like they hear an authority talking. And, you know, I need to be careful with that because especially when we talk like this topic, I ain't no goddamn authority.
We're all
You know
learning.
what I'm saying? Like at best I've read an academic paper or two, which is maybe better than the next guy you find on Facebook or YouTube. But you know what I mean? Like
Better than
I'm not
Matt
sitting
Walsh
here
and
on-
Ben Shapiro.
yeah, I'm not sitting here on some PhDs and some like you know what I mean? So like I always try to be careful with like when I express the opinion that I have, which is as informed as it can be, the difference between doing so and like asserting my opinion to be the case. You know what I mean? And there are discussions, there are topics where I could do that, right?
Sure.
But like if we talking on epistemology, no, externalism is right.
you
You
know.
internalists don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Y'all are wrong. Okay, there's the fucking you cannot solve that problem. So anyway,
Well, and
Yeah.
real quick, because I know I'm
Yeah, okay.
definitely getting tired, and I'm gonna have to bounce out. But this was awesome. I loved this
was a-
conversation. Yeah, I
Terrific
thought this was
conversation.
I thought this was awesome, and I want to repeat this because I think I really am getting more and more solidified in this view, just like I was and have been about morality. At the end of the day, every moral system out there having well-being as a concept and just not necessarily being applied.
and I'm with you
properly.
on that. Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
truly believe properly applied skepticism gets you to the places that all of us were coming to tonight. Because again, I don't think any of the skepticism that you were applying to these situations, Shane, was invalid or dismissive or problematic. And there is evidence that is enough
Right.
to push the lever to one side that is appropriate, that is acceptable to say, yes, this is now something that I do feel comfortable in saying. It is a justified.
The
True
problem
belief.
is
View
sometimes
reasons,
it's
not
hard to find the
ideological
difference
ones.
between genuine skepticism and an ingenuous I'm just asking questions.
Ah, man, I know, but I know,
That's there.
and the million
And-
followers on TikTok makes it even harder.
Right. And
Right.
this is the thing.
That's the
It's
issue.
like-
you know?
You realize you're like, okay, there are a lot of people who, so if I go use the phrase, look, I'm just asking questions, I'm like,
Yeah,
that doesn't
You
let the
can't say
person
that.
know that I'm not
Yeah,
their enemy, does it?
yeah,
Like, that doesn't
it's-
really help.
I
the
know,
conversation.
it's intense. It's hard to say.
Yeah. But,
Hey, I'm
all right,
skeptical of that. Leads you sometimes to losing friends. I understand.
100%. But I understand you and Purple both said that you got to wrap up. I want to
I
give
do,
everybody a
I'm
chance to, final thoughts on the stream. I respect everybody who came on today and voiced their opinion. I mean, I don't think there was enough disagreement to find conversation,
Mhm.
but I think we're all
Mhm.
roughly in the same mindset,
Oh, yeah.
if you will, right?
Yeah,
But
keep looking into the issues and have the conversations with the people that are dealing with them. It's like
you go.
that's kind of key. And we'll come to we'll sort it out. The governing bodies will sort it out. The thing is, what my hope is that we do so, as SR just said, on the basis of taking a skeptical approach,
Right.
peer-reviewed research, all of these things, rather than, cherry picking.
Yeah.
This example over here, this example over here, and just coming to a conclusion that's not really sound.
Yeah. And I would just, to wrap up, I would just say, I think the biggest difference between everything that was said tonight here with these agents versus another place and other actors is sincerity. Time and time again, when I engage in these types of conversations, I will find the exact same arguments, the exact same words. And the difference is sincerity. Because I really think, again, when we apply that on a consistent basis, we get to a place of humanism. We get to those places. And I love that. That's why I love these conversations. So
I'm the biggest
with these
asshole
people,
there could be, but I don't disagree with you, but I have to question, how are we defining properly applied skepticism?
and that my friend is for another show.
Yeah,
Another
really.
show. We don't have time for that.
Some other time, mate.
You pedantic son of a bitch.
I am skeptical of your skepticism.
I stop. I'm gonna open that bottle and then
put it away.
Now, torquing it for now. All right, so that's a good one. But all right, yeah. But anyways, I'm gonna close out. Thank you again to Purple, Secular, and Stephanie for coming on. And then I'm gonna take you guys off the stream and I'm gonna wrap up myself. But again, I give thanks and respect to those who came on, and I give respect to everybody who comes to my channel. Like, nope, there was that one guy, Alan. I don't respect Alan. Okay, respect to everyone who's been on my channel except for Alan. That guy was a dishonest piece of shit. Everybody else, though, I've respected. But especially these individuals. And I think it's important to find people who you could have conversations who other people can't have, that you can have those conversations with, because not everybody can have this conversation, and for understandable reasons that I can empathize with. But to my guests and my viewers alike, I wish nothing but health and happiness to you and everyone that you love. Stay safe, everybody. Que tengan buen día.